Nestled deep within the Mojave Desert, where the sun scorches the earth and the winds whisper secrets of the past, stands a relic of a bygone era, the Kelso Depot, once a bustling hub for weary travelers and railroad workers. This Spanish colonial revival building now serves as a visitor center for the Mojave National Preserve, but beneath its stucco walls and arched windows lies a history steeped in mystery, tragedy, and the unexplained. Join us as we delve into the 25 most haunting stories of the Kelso Depot, where the past refuses to stay buried. The Kelso Depot, standing alone in the heart of the Mojave Desert, has long been a symbol of both progress and isolation. Built to serve the bustling railroad line, it was once alive with the noise of trains, the chatter of passengers, and the laughter of workers in its upstairs restaurant. That restaurant, with its polished wooden floors and gleaming countertops, was the pride of the depot, employing several young women who served meals to travelers and locals alike. But beneath the veneer of hospitality and cheer, a shadow began to creep through the establishment, one that would leave an indelible mark on its history and create a legacy of unexplained disappearances. It began quietly. The first waitress to vanish was a young woman named Clara. She had been working late one evening, the clouds thick and the moon obscured, when she stepped into the pantry to retrieve some supplies. Moments later, her co-workers realized she had not returned. The restaurant doors were locked, the streets outside deserted, and yet there was no trace of her. Search parties scoured the surrounding desert, calling her name across the barren landscape, but Clara had simply vanished. Her personal items remained behind in the restaurant, the tip jar she had just counted, the apron she always wore, even the unfinished note she had left on the counter, but she was gone. At first, management hoped it was a temporary absence, a personal choice, or a brief trip. But then the second disappearance occurred. Margaret, another young waitress, vanished under almost identical circumstances. She had been preparing the dining area for the night shift, walking between tables, when she simply disappeared, leaving her tray of utensils untouched. Panic began to spread among the remaining staff. Whispers filled the empty corners of the restaurant, suggesting that the depot itself had grown restless. Some claimed to have seen shadows flitting along the walls, far too human in shape to be merely tricked light from the lanterns. Others reported a cold sensation in the air, like a sudden gust of winter in the middle of a desert summer. The disappearances continued, each one under the cover of a moonless night. Each time, the staff and search parties combed the depot and surrounding desert with no success. Friends and family offered rewards for information. Investigators were brought in, but nothing explained the vanishing of these young women. Some began to suspect the desert itself, an unforgiving landscape swallowing those who lingered too long near the tracks. Others feared the supernatural, whispering that the depot was cursed, that it was hungry for the energy of life it had once sustained so fully. Employees who remained began noticing unsettling phenomena. In the restaurant, the chairs sometimes rocked gently on their own, as if someone invisible had been seated and then disappeared. Plates clinked together without anyone handling them. Some staff reported hearing faint laughter or soft footsteps moving across the wooden floor late at night, only to find themselves alone. The air would grow inexplicably cold, and a heavy sense of dread would press against their chests, as if the very walls were mourning the loss of those who had vanished. Visitors to the Kelso Depot would sometimes notice the residual tension. Guests reported catching glimpses of young women moving in the upstairs windows, only to vanish when approached. Others heard whispers carried through the wind, faint calls for help, or soft sobs echoing in empty hallways. The stories spread quickly, and the depot gained a reputation for being haunted. Locals avoided it after dark, warning travelers to steer clear of the building once the sun dipped below the horizon. Over the decades, the legend of the vanishing waitresses grew, and the truth behind their disappearances remained elusive. Some historians suggest the depot's connection to the desert and the railroad created a liminal space, a threshold between worlds, where those who lingered too long could slip from one reality into another. Others maintain that a darker human influence may have been involved, though no evidence has ever surfaced to support such claims. Still, The eerie consistency of the vanishings always on moonless nights, always upstairs in the restaurants, suggests something more sinister, something tied intimately to the building itself. Staff and visitors alike report ongoing strange phenomena in the depot. Even now, decades later, the upstairs restaurant feels charged with energy. Plates may clatter, chairs shift, and a faint, almost imperceptible murmur carries through the air. Some say that if you listen closely during the moonless nights, you can hear the footsteps of the missing waitresses pacing between tables, perhaps replaying the last moments of their lives. Occasionally, a figure appears near the counter, a shadowy shape, with the vague outline of a young woman, vanishing when approached, leaving behind only the lingering sense of sorrow and unresolved presence. The Kelso Depot's story of the vanishing waitresses is not merely a tale of lost employees. It is a chilling reminder of how history and mystery intertwine in places touched by isolation, tragedy, and the unknown. The disappearances remain unsolved, the questions unanswered, and the spirits of the missing seem to linger in quiet corners, watching, waiting, and reminding anyone who dares to enter that some stories are never meant to end. Today, the Kelso Depot stands as a silent sentinel in the desert, a place where the past whispers through its walls, and the vanishing waitresses continue to be remembered not only for their work, but for the mystery that surrounds their sudden, unexplained absence. Those who visit are advised to respect the building and its history, for the echoes of the past may still be very much alive, lingering just beyond the reach of human understanding, in the moonless shadows where the waitresses were last seen. The Kelso Depot sits quietly in the heart of the Mojave Desert, a relic of a bygone era when the whistle of trains punctuated the vast, empty landscape. Today, the tracks have long been abandoned, the rails rusted and silent, yet there is a phenomenon that continues to haunt both visitors and staff alike: the phantom train whistle. Though no train has passed through Kelso in decades, the distant, mournful sound of a whistle often rises through the desert night, echoing across the depot, as if the past refuses to remain buried. It begins subtly, usually just after dusk, when the sun has dipped below the horizon and the desert is quiet. Visitors describe hearing a low, drawn-out note carried on the night air. At first, barely audible over the whisper of the wind. Gradually, it grows louder, clearer, resonating across the empty depot grounds. The whistle is not like any modern train horn. It carries a timbre from another era, sharp yet hollow, mournful, almost human in its resonance. Those who hear it are gripped by an immediate chill, a sense of isolation magnified by the vast emptiness of the desert surrounding the depot. Many who have experienced the sound report that it seems to come from nowhere in particular. The tracks lie empty, stretching into the desert with no sign of movement. There is no vibration in the ground, no clatter of wheels on rails, just the eerie echo of a train that has long ceased to exist. Guests say that it can seem impossibly close at times, as though a massive engine is rumbling just beyond the horizon. Yet, when they step outside to investigate, only the stillness of the desert greets them. The sound fades as mysteriously as it arrives, leaving behind a profound sense of unease and an unanswered question. What train, if any, is still passing through Kelso? Staff at the depot are familiar with the phenomenon, though few speak of it openly. One longtime employee recalls a night when he was performing routine maintenance outside the main building. The desert was silent, and the moon hung low in the sky. Suddenly, he heard the distinct wail of a train whistle, long and mournful. He froze, listening as the sound swelled, carrying with it the unmistakable rhythm of a train approaching. Heart pounding, he ran to the tracks, expecting to see a light in the distance, yet nothing came. The whistle echoed once more, fading slowly, and then the night returned to absolute silence. He never explained it to anyone at the time, but the memory of that night remained vivid, impossible to forget. Historians and paranormal enthusiasts alike offer theories. Some suggest that the whistle is a residual echo, the lingering imprint of trains that once rumbled through the depot decades ago. They argue that events of great emotional or physical intensities, such as the bustling activity of passengers, the whistle of the engineer signaling departures, or even tragic accidents along the line can leave an energy signature, replaying intermittently for those sensitive enough to perceive it. In this interpretation, the phantom train whistle is not a ghost in the traditional sense, but a memory frozen in time, replaying in the emptiness of the desert. Others, however, interpret the phenomenon as a haunting in the more literal sense. They claim that the whistle is a warning, a signal from the past echoing forward through the decades. Legends tell of trains that never reached their destinations, of engineers who disappeared or perished along the tracks, and of passengers whose journeys ended abruptly in tragedy. To hear the whistle is to be reminded of these lost souls, a spectral reminder that not all stories conclude neatly, and that some spirits linger, tied to the routes they once traveled. Visitors often describe the emotional effect of the phantom train whistle as profound. The sound evokes an ache of loneliness, a sense of longing, and a shiver of recognition that something is present beyond what the eyes can see. Some feel compelled to stand silently, listening as the note stretches across the night sky, as if acknowledging the presence of those who passed through Kelso long ago. Others are frightened, retreating to the depot building for shelter, their imaginations running wild with visions of a spectral locomotive, its lights cutting through the desert darkness, carrying the lost and the restless. Despite the fear it instills, the whistle has become a defining part of the Kelso Depot's mystique. Guests and enthusiasts return, hoping to hear it, drawn by the magnetic pull of history and the unexplained. Each encounter is different, sometimes brief, sometimes lingering, but all share the same unmistakable quality. The sound is alive, echoing across the desert, impossible to ignore, and impossible to explain fully. The phantom train whistle is more than a sound. It is a bridge between past and present, a reminder of the lives and stories that once passed through Kelso, whether a residual memory, a spectral warning, or something entirely beyond understanding. It continues to haunt the depot, echoing across the tracks, carrying with it the weight of history, loss, and the desert's eternal, eerie quiet. Those who hear it are left with an indelible impression. The past is never truly gone, and in the stillness of the Mojave night, it sometimes speaks, long and mournful, in the wail of a train that no longer runs. Room 6 at the Kelso Depot has long been a source of unease, whispered about in hushed tones by staff and visitors alike. Once a dormitory for railroad workers, it was a place meant for rest after long days managing the tracks and trains that coursed through the Mojave Desert. But over a century ago, tragedy struck within its walls, leaving an imprint that continues to linger. The story begins with a man named Thomas, a quiet worker known for his diligence and reserved demeanor. Over time, it became apparent to his colleagues that he carried a burden, a darkness that weighed heavily on him. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of work, Thomas was found deceased in room 6, the details of his passing tragic and untold. Yet the sorrow of that night seemed to seep into the very fabric of the room. Guests who have stayed in room 6 often report a sensation that is difficult to describe but impossible to ignore. The oppressive weight of presence. It is not a fleeting chill or a passing shadow, but a pervasive heaviness that settles over the body, pressing against the chest and tightening around the limbs. Many describe it as if someone invisible sits at the edge of the bed, watching and waiting, silent yet overwhelmingly aware. Visitors note that the air in the room feels dense, charged, almost electric, and that the slightest movement can trigger an echo of the past the creak of a floorboard, the whisper of a draft along the walls. Footsteps are the most common and unsettling phenomenon in room 6. Guests awake to the sound of slow, deliberate pacing, a rhythm too measured to be accidental. The steps start softly, barely audible over the hum of the desert wind outside, and grow steadily louder as if the figure is circling the room. When occupants attempt to follow the sounds, they find the space empty, and yet the pacing continues, undeterred by the absence of a corporeal form. Some have reported that even when leaving the room, the sounds can be heard faintly in the hallway, suggesting that the presence is not bound entirely by walls, but drifts freely, tethered to the memory of Thomas's final hours. In addition to the auditory disturbances, shadowy figures have been reported in the corners of vision, These are not fleeting illusions or tricks of light, but defined shapes that appear to move with purpose. Guests recount glimpsing a tall, indistinct form, hunched slightly, moving silently along the edges of the room. When directly observed, the figure vanishes, leaving only the sensation that it is still there, still observing. Some who have dared to remain still claim that the shadow can become more distinct over time, almost solidifying, yet never fully revealing a face or features, as if the grief and anguish within it prevent it from taking a human form. The windows and walls themselves seem to react to the presence. Guests have reported doors opening or closing without any draft, blinds rattling as if disturbed by unseen hands, and mirrors reflecting shapes that disappear when focused upon. One guest described waking to see a shadow standing in front of the mirror, its outline blurred but unmistakably human. The figure turned slowly, as if aware of being watched, and then evaporated into the reflective surface, leaving a lingering feeling of unease that persisted long after morning light filled the room. Some historians suggest that Room 6's haunting is amplified by the isolation of the depot. The building sits surrounded by miles of desert, a vast emptiness that emphasizes the weight of history and memory. In such a place, the energy of tragedy can persist, feeding off the silence and the sparse human activity. The combination of solitude, sorrow, and the residual energy of Thomas's last moments creates a perfect storm for paranormal activity. A liminal space where past and present coexist in uneasy tension. Those who have stayed in Room 6 consistently report similar experiences, suggesting a pattern rather than coincidence. Guests describe sudden drops in temperature, unexplained sounds of movement, and a sense of being watched or followed. Some leave the room with lingering anxiety, unable to shake the feeling that Thomas's spirit is still nearby, perhaps trapped in a cycle of grief and unrest. Even years after his death, the stories continue, passed from visitor to visitor, reinforcing the reputation of the room as one of the depot's most haunted spaces. Interestingly, the haunting does not appear malevolent in the traditional sense. While it is undeniably unsettling, those who encounter the shadow often report a sense of sadness or longing rather than outright threat. It is as if Thomas's presence is seeking acknowledgement, a recognition of a life interrupted and a tragedy unresolved. Some guests have even attempted to speak to the shadow, leaving notes or small tokens in the room, and many claim that the sensation of oppression eases slightly afterward, suggesting a fragile connection between the living and the lingering spirit. The legend of Room 6 continues to draw both the curious and the brave. Paranormal investigators have visited, setting up cameras and audio equipment in hopes of capturing evidence, often recording anomalous sounds, unexplained shadows, and temperature fluctuations. Even skeptics find themselves unsettled by the consistency of the experiences reported by multiple independent sources. The room remains a potent reminder that some tragedies leave a mark far deeper than physical scars, and that grief and loss can transcend death, imprinting themselves onto the spaces where they occur. Room 6 at the Kelso Depot is more than a haunted room. It is a portal to a past moment, frozen in time, a place where sorrow and memory continue to linger. Guests who step inside are immediately aware that the room is alive in its own way, filled with echoes of footsteps, whispers of movement, and the silent presence of a shadow that watches from the periphery. For those willing to confront the haunting, the experience is unforgettable, leaving an imprint on the mind and a reminder that some stories never truly end. They simply wait, hidden in the corners of vision, in the pacing of unseen feet, and in the shadow of a life lost too soon. The Kelso Depot has long stood as a monument to the ghostly echoes of the Mojave Desert, a place where the weight of history and isolation converge to create experiences that defy explanation. Among its most unsettling tales is that of the disappearing guest visitors who check into the depot, sometimes for a single night, only to vanish completely. Their rooms remain untouched, personal belongings left behind, as if the occupants had simply evaporated into the desert air. Locals speak of these vanishings with a mix of fear and awe, acknowledging the depot as a place where the boundary between the living and the unseen is disturbingly thin. The disappearances often begin subtly. Guests arrive, perhaps weary from long drives or cross-country treks on the railroad, and settle into their rooms. At first, nothing seems out of the ordinary. The rooms are clean and welcoming. The air carries the scent of aged wood and desert dust, and the atmosphere feels calm despite the depot's history. But as night falls, subtle hints emerge, objects slightly moved, faint whispers drifting through the halls, or the sound of footsteps echoing along the corridors when no one else is present. Guests awake in the early hours to discover the sensation of being watched, though no figure is ever seen. It is during these nocturnal hours that the disappearances occur. Patrons vanish so completely that even the most thorough searches find nothing. No footprints, no sign of struggle, no trace of leaving through doors or windows. Clothes, luggage, and personal items remain behind, arranged as if the guests might return at any moment. In some instances, other visitors or staff claim to catch glimpses of these vanished guests wandering the depot's hallways, only for the figures to dissolve into thin air when approached. The experience is disorienting, leaving witnesses questioning their own senses, uncertain whether they have glimpsed a spirit, a mirage, or something far stranger. Eyewitness accounts paint a consistent and eerie picture. One longtime staff member recalls checking in a family for an overnight stay. The next morning, the children were gone, leaving toys neatly placed in the corner and the parents' luggage untouched. Another employee reported seeing a young man sitting at a table in the lobby late at night, quietly reading a newspaper. When the staff member approached to offer assistance, the figure simply vanished, leaving the chair and newspaper behind, as if frozen in time. Even seasoned visitors have described the same experience, a sudden awareness of someone nearby, only to turn and find the space empty, the echo of human presence lingering in the air. Some theorists suggest that the disappearances are tied to the depot's unique location and history. The Kelso Depot sits amid miles of desert, a vast and unyielding environment that amplifies isolation and the sense of vulnerability. The desert itself is often described as a liminal space, a threshold between worlds, and some speculate that the depot functions as a focal point where energy from past events accumulates. Trains once carried passengers to and from distant cities, and the depot teemed with activity, laughter, and the mundane concerns of everyday life. With the passage of time, those moments of vitality may have left behind residual energy, seeking to repeat themselves in fleeting, spectral ways. The pattern of disappearances often aligns with this theory. Guests are more likely to vanish during moonless nights, or when the desert is particularly still, conditions that heighten both the mystery and the sense of vulnerability. In such moments, it is said, the veil between the present and the past thins, allowing residual echoes, perhaps spirits themselves, to intrude into the world of the living. Some researchers speculate that those who disappear are drawn into these echoes, becoming trapped in a loop of past events, forever replaying their final moments within the depot's walls. Other explanations are far less benign. Folklore surrounding the Kelso Depot suggests that it may harbor entities that feed off human presence, figures who lure guests into their midst, leaving only emptiness behind. Witnesses describe sudden chills, a tightening of the chest, or the sensation of invisible hands guiding them, more pushing them toward corridors that seem to extend impossibly into darkness. In these interpretations, the depot is not merely a historical site but an active participant in the disappearances. A building imbued with intent and memory, capable of bending the rules of reality itself. Despite these unnerving stories, the Kelso Depot continues to attract visitors, paranormal enthusiasts, history buffs, and the curious venture into its hallways, often hoping to witness the phenomena firsthand. Cameras, audio recorders, and night vision equipment frequently capture anomalies. Shadows moving independently of light, footsteps echoing along empty corridors, and fleeting glimpses of figures who vanish when approached. However, the most chilling element, the disappearances themselves, remains unrecorded, known only through eyewitness accounts, local lore, and the palpable tension felt by anyone who spends the night within the depot. The disappearing guests leave behind a sense of unease that lingers long after the individual vanishes. Rooms retain the warmth and disarray of human activity, but the absence of the occupant is a reminder of how tenuous reality can feel within the depot's walls. Visitors report sleepless nights, waking with the sensation of being observed, or glimpsing movement in the corner of their vision that disappears when they try to focus. Some leave the depot early, driven away by fear. Others return, drawn by curiosity and the hope of encountering something extraordinary. Ultimately, the story of the disappearing guests is a testament to the Kelso Depot's enduring mystery. The disappearances are a chilling reminder that the depot is more than a relic of the past. It is a living repository of memory, sorrow, and unexplained phenomena. Those who enter its halls may find themselves caught between what is seen and what is sensed, between the living and the echoes of those who have vanished. In the silence of the desert night, the depot continues to claim attention, leaving behind stories of guests who check in, never check out, and whose presence lingers only in whispers, shadows, and the imaginations of those left behind. The Kelso Depot, nestled in the heart of the Mojave Desert, is a place where history and isolation collide, leaving behind traces of the past that refuse to fade. Among its many eerie phenomena, one of the most persistent and unsettling is the presence of cold spots, areas where the temperature inexplicably plummets, sending shivers down the spines of anyone who enters. These sudden drops in warmth are not limited to a drafty corner or a poorly insulated wall. They appear at random, often in the upstairs rooms that once housed railroad workers. For those who have experienced them, the chill carries a sense of awareness, a presence that seems to observe, judge, or even linger with intent. Visitors to the depot often describe the cold spots as abrupt and jarring. One moment, the air feels warm and dry, carrying the familiar scent of desert dust and aged wood. The next, a wave of icy air sweeps through the room, making breath visible and raising goosebumps along the skin. Staff members report feeling it even in the peak of summer, when the desert sun blazes outside and the temperature should be unbearable. The chill is never gradual, never explained by faulty ventilation. It's sudden, immediate, and unmistakable, like the building itself is exhaling a frozen secret from another era. These cold spots are often accompanied by a sense of unease. Guests speak of an intangible weight pressing against their chest, a sensation that goes beyond mere discomfort. Some claim to hear whispers in these areas, faint and indistinct, carried on the invisible currents of cold air. Others report the sudden impression that they are being watched, as if unseen eyes follow their movements across the room. Even seasoned travelers familiar with the desert's harsh extremes find themselves unnerved, their instincts warning them that the cold is more than a natural anomaly, is a warning, a manifestation of the depot's lingering history. The origin of these chilling pockets is widely debated. Historians suggest that they may be residual energy, a phenomenon often referred to as cold spots in paranormal studies. The upstairs rooms, once dormitories for railroad workers, were sites of intense labor, exhaustion, and, at times, despair. Over the decades, countless travelers and employees passed through these spaces, carrying their joys, sorrows, and even tragedies with them. Some theorists propose that the building absorbed these emotional imprints, which manifest physically as cold spots, particularly in locations tied to moments of extreme stress or loss. One well-documented account involves a guest named Samuel, who stayed overnight in one of the upper rooms while researching the depot's history. As night fell, he noticed the air near the far corner of the room growing perceptibly colder. At first, he attributed it to the desert wind sneaking through an old window, but when he approached the corner, the chill intensified, enveloping him in a sudden frost that seemed to radiate from the walls themselves. Samuel felt an invisible pressure, as though he were being drawn into the corner, and a whisper brushed against his ear, too faint to understand but undeniably present. Terrified, he left the room, only to return the next day and find everything exactly as he had left it. The temperature back to normal, as if nothing had happened. Staff members have reported similar experiences, During late-night cleaning or maintenance, employees describe walking through hallways and feeling abrupt, icy drafts, often accompanied by the sensation of someone or something passing by. Objects near these cold spots sometimes tremble or shift slightly, as if responding to the presence of an unseen force. A veteran employee recounted the experience of opening a door to a vacant room, only to feel the temperature drop so suddenly that it froze the sweat on his brow. He described hearing a faint exhale, like the breath of someone standing just behind him, yet turning revealed an empty space. Local folklore offers a more ominous interpretation. Stories passed down through generations suggest that the cold spots marked locations where spirits lingered, trapped between the living world and the afterlife. Some claim that railroad workers who perished in accidents, or guests who met untimely ends within the depot, remain tethered to these rooms, their energy manifesting as the sudden chill. Witnesses often report that these cold areas correspond with the most tragic events in the depot's history, hinting at a connection between human suffering and the persistent chill. Even visitors who enter the depot without knowledge of its haunted reputation find themselves affected. Hikers, travelers, and paranormal enthusiasts alike describe entering certain upstairs rooms and immediately sensing the temperature drop, an instinctive reaction of unease or fear. The cold seems to bypass ordinary explanations like wind or structural flaws, leaving rational minds scrambling for reason while their bodies react with instinctual apprehension. Some guests have attempted to document the phenomenon using thermometers and digital sensors, only to find readings that fluctuate wildly without explanation, further cementing the mystery. Over the years, the cold spots have become an intrinsic part of the Kelso Depot's identity. They are not limited to one location, but appear in multiple rooms and corridors, often unpredictably. Their presence serves as a reminder that the building is not merely a relic of the past, but a living archive of memories, emotions, and perhaps even lingering spirits. For those who experience the chill, it is a visceral, unforgettable encounter on awareness that the depot holds secrets beyond the reach of ordinary understanding. The cold spots of the Kelso Depot are more than just drops in temperature. They are a haunting, tangible link to the building's history, a whisper from the past that chills the body and unsettles the mind. Anyone who enters the upper rooms cannot ignore the sensation, and those who experience it leave with the memory of an invisible presence that watches, waits, and reminds them that the depot is never truly empty. The icy air is a secret carried across the decades, a physical manifestation of sorrow, tragedy, and lingering energy. A testament to the Mojave Desert's most enduring and mysterious haunting. The Kelso Depot sits quietly in the Mojave Desert, a weathered monument to the days when trains ruled the landscape and towns like Kelso thrived on the movement of goods and people. Today, the depot is a relic, mostly empty and still, yet it hums with a presence that defies explanation. Among the most reported and unsettling phenomena in the depot are the mysterious footsteps that echo through its long, empty halls late at night. These sounds, soft at first, then insistent, have been recounted by visitors, staff, and paranormal enthusiasts alike, each account reinforcing the reputation of the depot as a place where the past refuses to remain silent. The phenomenon typically begins during the hours when the depot is abandoned. Visitors report hearing the first faint tap of a foot against the wooden floorboards, followed by another, and then another, forming a rhythm that is unmistakably human. Yet when anyone investigates, the halls are empty, the rooms vacant, and the origin of the sound impossible to locate. The footsteps travel with intention, moving from one corridor to another, sometimes approaching rooms or doorways before suddenly stopping. The pauses are as unsettling as the sounds themselves, creating a tension that hangs heavy in the air, as though the unseen walker is aware of being observed. Those who have experienced the footsteps often describe a strange sense of presence that accompanies the sound. The air seems charged, and the faint echo carries more than just noise. It carries the weight of history, of lives long past. Some say the rhythm of the steps resembles the movement of a weary traveler, deliberate and steady, while others insist it is faster, almost frantic, as if driven by a sense of urgency or desperation. The contrast between the silence of the desert outside and the persistent echo inside makes the phenomenon all the more unnerving, as though the depot itself has become a conduit between two worlds. One longtime staff member recounted an experience that has since become legendary among visitors. One night, while performing a routine check of the building, she heard the distinct sound of boots walking along the corridor outside the main office. Expecting perhaps another staff member, she called out, only to be met with silence. The footsteps continued, approaching her office door, stopping just outside. She froze, listening as the sounds seemed to hesitate, linger, and then retreat down the hall, fading into the distance. By the time she dared to step into the corridor, there was no one there, not a single footprint, not a single sign of life, only the echo of a presence that had passed moments before. Paranormal investigators who have visited the depot describe the phenomenon in similarly chilling terms. They have set up audio recorders and night vision cameras in the hope of capturing evidence, often recording footsteps that appear out of nowhere, with no corresponding figure visible. Sometimes, thermographic cameras pick up brief, shadowy shapes moving along the hallways, though these figures are indistinct and fleeting, vanishing as quickly as the footsteps themselves. Attempts to communicate or interact with the presence, asking questions aloud, clapping, or knocking, sometimes provoke a reaction, a change in tempo, a pause, or a sudden retreat of the sound. The intelligence suggested by these reactions hints at something more than a mere echo of the past. Locals offer explanations rooted in both history and folklore. The depot, once a bustling hub for railroad workers and travelers, saw countless footsteps along its floors. Some believe that the echoes are residual energy, the imprint of those who moved tirelessly from platform to office, from room to waiting area, leaving traces of their movement in the building's structure. Others argue that the footsteps are spirits of the past, lingering because of unfinished business or a desire to remain close to the place they once inhabited. There are even whispers that the footsteps belong to those who met untimely or tragic ends at the depot, replaying their final steps in a loop, a haunting reminder of mortality and loss. The nature of the footsteps also suggests a connection to the depot's more mysterious events. Many of the reported cold spots, sudden apparitions, and other paranormal phenomena coincide with the areas where the footsteps are most often heard. Visitors who experience the sound describe a strong sense of being followed, watched, or even guided by an invisible presence. In some cases, the footsteps seem to circle or patrol specific rooms, as though the unseen walker is bound to particular corridors or corners, tethered to memories or energy that refuses to dissipate. Even skeptics who enter the depot cannot ignore the phenomenon. Numerous independent witnessers, those with no prior knowledge of the depot's reputation, have reported hearing the unmistakable rhythm of footsteps echoing through empty halls. Some follow the sound, only to find that it moves as they move, always a step ahead or just out of reach. Others stay rooted in place, feeling a mixture of dread and fascination, as though they are in the presence of something that transcends explanation. The footsteps have become an integral part of the Kelso Depot's haunted identity. For guests willing to explore the building at night, they are an unforgettable experience. A reminder that the depot is not merely a static relic, but a place alive with echoes of the past. Whether the footsteps are the memories of railroad workers, spirits with unfinished business, or some unknown energy bound to the building, they serve as a chilling testament to the persistence of history and the thin line between the living and the unseen. The mysterious footsteps of the Kelso Depot continue to captivate and terrify those who encounter them. Each tap along the wooden floors is a reminder that the depot's halls are never truly empty, that the echoes of the past still roam freely, and that some presences, though unseen, leave an imprint that resonates long after the desert sun has risen. For anyone who ventures into its corridors at night, the sound is unavoidable, and the experience lingers, a ghostly rhythm that calls to the imagination and challenges the boundary between reality and the unknown. The Kelso Depot, an aging landmark in the Mojave Desert, carries with it more than just the weight of history. It harbors mysteries that defy explanation. Among the most persistent and unsettling phenomena reported by visitors and staff alike are the flickering lights that haunt the depot's hallways, rooms, and common areas. The lights behave in ways that defy logic. They turn on and off, seemingly at random, pulse with sudden intensity, or dim without warning. Sometimes the flickers coincide with the presence of people. Sometimes they occur in rooms long empty, creating an atmosphere of unease and anticipation. The phenomenon is most pronounced in the evening, when the desert sun has set and the depot is cloaked in shadows. Guests often notice the first flicker while performing mundane tasks, reaching for a switch, walking down a hallway, or checking into a room. At first, the changes in illumination seem harmless, almost ordinary. But the longer the depot is observed at night, the more erratic and deliberate the flickering becomes. Lights that should remain steady begin to blink in rhythm, sometimes dimming and brightening in patterns that feel intentional, almost like a coded message. Staff members, particularly those who have worked at the depot for decades, report similar experiences. One night, a maintenance worker entered the depot to perform a routine inspection. As he walked through the hallways, the fluorescent bulbs above him began to stutter, casting an uneven glow. He paused, noticing that the flickers seemed to follow his movements, dimming as he approached certain areas and brightening when he moved away. By the time he reached the lobby, the lights had begun flashing in a sequence he could not explain, as though trying to communicate something beyond words. He later admitted that he felt watched, as if unseen eyes were tracking his every step. Visitors to the depot have shared comparable stories. Guests report sitting in their rooms when the overhead light begins to pulse, sometimes accompanying the flicker with a faint hum or electrical buzz. Some describe the lights dimming as if responding to their presence, brightening again when they step back, or flickering in patterns that mimic human gestures. A few have reported hearing whispers or faint footsteps alongside the visual disturbances, leading them to believe that the lights are being manipulated by an unseen force. Paranormal investigators often point to the depot's rich history as a potential explanation. Built during the height of the railroad era, the Kelso Depot has seen thousands of travelers, workers, and residents pass through its doors. Its walls have absorbed the energy of countless events, from joyous arrivals and farewells to tragedies and accidents. Some researchers theorize that the flickering lights are a manifestation of this residual energy, the building itself trying to make contact with the living. In this interpretation, the lights are more than a mechanical anomaly. They are the voices of the past, reaching out from the shadows. Electrical engineers and skeptics offer a different perspective, suggesting that the flickering may be caused by the depot's aging wiring or the desert's extreme climate affecting electrical systems. While this explanation accounts for some occurrences, it fails to explain reports of lights flickering in unpowered rooms or in areas where circuits are entirely shut down. Witnesses have also described lights dimming in unison across multiple floors, a pattern that would be impossible to replicate mechanically given the depot's complex and outdated electrical infrastructure. One particularly chilling account comes from a guest who stayed in one of the upper rooms, a space notorious for strange activity. At night, the lights began to flicker violently, bathing the room in intermittent shadows. The guest felt an icy draft sweep across the room and noticed objects shifting slightly in the corner of their vision. When they reached for the light switch, the bulbs pulsed as if reacting to their touch, before plunging the room into darkness entirely. Moments later, the lights returned, brighter than before, illuminating a space that had been empty only seconds prior. The guest fled the room, certain they had encountered something beyond comprehension. The flickering lights are often accompanied by a sensation of being observed. Guests report feeling the weight of unseen eyes, a subtle pressure in the room, or the inexplicable impression that someone is moving just beyond their line of sight. Some claim that the flickering seems to occur in areas where previous events, accidents, altercations, or unexplained deaths took place, reinforcing the idea that the depot itself is alive with the memory of its past. The lights, in essence, become a medium through which the unseen communicates, offering glimpses of presence without form. The phenomenon has become an inseparable part of the Kelso Depot's identity. Guests who experience the flickering lights often leave with a lingering sense of wonder and fear, a recognition that the building is more than brick and mortar. Staff, too, regard the lights with a mix of respect and apprehension, accepting that some of the depot's mysteries are beyond human explanation. Paranormal enthusiasts continue to flock to the site, drawn by the possibility of witnessing the lights and perhaps glimpsing the entities believed to manipulate them. Ultimately, the flickering lights of the Kelso Depot serve as a haunting reminder that the past is never truly gone, whether the result of mechanical quirks, residual energy, or the presence of spirits. They mark the building as a space where history and the supernatural intersect. For anyone wandering the halls after dark, the flickers are impossible to ignore, visual heartbeat of the depot's enduring mysteries, echoing the lives, tragedies, and secrets that linger long after the last train has departed. The Kelso Depot has long been a place of mystery, a structure that holds the echoes of the past deep within its walls. Among its most chilling phenomena are the mysterious handprints that appear on windows and mirrors throughout the building. These prints are unlike anything a visitor might leave behind accidentally. They emerge overnight, smeared and ghostly, as if someone pressed against the glass in a desperate attempt to escape. They are fleeting but undeniable, leaving staff and guests alike questioning whether the depot is haunted or whether it preserves a memory far older than anyone could imagine. The phenomenon is most commonly reported in the guest rooms and main offices. Staff report coming in each morning to discover handprints that were not present the previous evening. These prints are almost always smeared, stretched, and distorted, as though the hand that made them was pressing frantically, struggling to break through the barrier of the glass. In some cases, the prints appear on mirrors, reflecting a vague impression of a hand, even when the room is empty. In others, they mark windows overlooking the empty desert, giving the impression that someone is trapped inside, attempting to escape into the night. One of the earliest accounts comes from a longtime employee named Clara. She arrived for her shift one morning to find a series of handprints smeared across the lobby's large front window. The prints were unusual, too high and uneven to belong to any of the cleaning staff, and no tools or substances had been used on the glass that could create such a pattern. Clara wiped the window clean and went about her day, only to return the following morning and find the prints again, in the exact same position. She later admitted that a chill ran down her spine, and she began avoiding the lobby after dark, feeling the weight of unseen eyes watching from the glass. Guests have reported equally unnerving encounters. One visitor recounted staying in a room on the upper floor, known for its history with railroad workers. In the middle of the night, they awoke to the sensation of someone standing close by. When they turned toward the mirror, a handprint was already forming on the surface, smeared as if someone had pressed against it moments before. The guest described an overwhelming sense of urgency and panic emanating from the imprint, as though the person who left it had been struggling to escape something unseen. By morning, the handprint had faded, leaving only a ghostly outline, impossible to clean completely. Staff have tried to find logical explanations, but the phenomenon remains resistant to reason. Some have suggested condensation or natural humidity as a cause, but the prints are often visible even in the dry, arid conditions of the desert. Others speculate that visitors might leave fingerprints accidentally, but the repeated appearance of the same patterns overnight, in areas closed and secured, makes this unlikely. Paranormal investigators who have studied the depot agree that the prints exhibit characteristics consistent with supernatural activity, particularly the sense of urgency and the impossibility of natural explanation. The handprints are often accompanied by other phenomena that reinforce their eerie presence. Guests have described sudden drops in temperature near the windows or mirrors where the prints appear, as if the air itself has thickened around the lingering presence. Faint whispers or indistinct murmurs are sometimes heard at the same time, though no one is visible. The combination of tactile evidence, the prints themselves, and sensory impressions creates a powerful sense that someone or something is trapped within the building, trying desperately to make contact with the living world. Historical accounts of the Kelso Depot lend weight to these experiences. During its busiest years, the depot was home to hundreds of railroad workers, travelers, and transient visitors. Accidents were not uncommon, and the harsh desert environment often made survival precarious. Some of the handprints are thought to belong to those who died within the building or nearby. Their energy left behind as a lingering imprint on the glass surfaces. Witnesses report that the handprints often appear in locations tied to tragedy rooms, once occupied by workers who fell ill or passengers who never returned home. In some instances, the handprints seem almost communicative. Staff have noted that the smears sometimes form patterns resembling gestures reaching upward, as though pleading, or pressed flat, as if bracing against invisible walls. Guests have described the impression that the hands are not merely prints but warnings, attempts to convey a message across the boundary between the living and the dead. The combination of visual, tactile, and atmospheric cues makes the experience deeply unsettling and impossible to ignore. Over the years, the handprints have become a defining feature of the Kelso Depot's haunted reputation. Visitors who encounter them report an acute awareness of the building's history, of the countless lives that pass through its halls, and of the tragedy and hardship that may still linger in the atmosphere. Staff approach their nightly duties with a mixture of respect and apprehension, recognizing that some of the depot's mysteries cannot be explained, only witnessed. The mysterious handprints on windows and mirrors serve as a chilling reminder that the past is never truly gone. They are more than mere smears on glass. They are a connection to lives lost, to energy left behind, and to the unresolved stories of those who once walked the depot's halls. For anyone who witnesses them, the prints are impossible to ignore. A desperate, silent plea pressed against the boundary between this world and the next. A ghostly reminder that Kelso Depot is far from empty, and that some presences remain, waiting to be seen, waiting to be heard, and waiting to reach out. The Kelso Depot, standing isolated in the Mojave Desert, is a relic of an era long past, a building that once hummed with the life of travelers, railroad workers, and merchants passing through the desert. Today, it is largely silent, its corridors empty, its tracks rusting in the relentless sun. Yet for those who venture into its shadowed halls after dark, there is one sound that refuses to be silenced: the haunting cries of a child. The phenomenon is most commonly reported late at night, when the depot is empty and the desert outside is still. Visitors and staff alike have described hearing the faint sound of sobbing, high-pitched and sorrowful, echoing through the hallways and settling in the basement. The cries are often intermittent, fading in and out, as if the child is moving closer or retreating, sometimes accompanied by the faint scuff of small footsteps on the wooden floors. Despite repeated investigations, no physical trace of a child has ever been found. Rooms and corners are checked, and the basement is explored thoroughly, yet it remains empty, leaving only the echoes of grief hanging in the cold air. Staff members who have worked at the depot for years recount similar stories. One night, a security guard making his rounds reported following the sound of the cries to the basement, heart racing as he descended the narrow stairs. The sobbing seemed to come from a corner near an old storage area, the kind of place where boxes and equipment were stacked long ago and rarely disturbed. When he shone his flashlight, the room was vacant, dust motes dancing in the beam, the air still except for the echoes of the weeping. He described feeling an icy chill that seemed to wrap around him, a pressure in the air as though someone unseen were curled up on the floor, searching for comfort. Visitors have had equally unsettling encounters. One guest, staying overnight while exploring the depot, described waking in the middle of the night to soft, inconsolable crying. Drawn toward the sound, she descended the stairs slowly, following the muffled sobs down to the basement. The cries seemed to move with her, shifting from one corner to another, always just out of reach. She called out, her voice trembling, but received no response. When she finally reached the source, she found nothing but the cold, empty space and the lingering sense of presence. The sound eventually faded, leaving her shaken, unable to shake the feeling that the child's sorrow had followed her back upstairs. Paranormal investigators suggest that the cries may be a manifestation of residual energy, tied to the depot's long and complex history. During its peak, the depot was a hub of activity for families traveling through the desert, workers stationed in the building for long stretches, and children accompanying parents on trips. Some researchers theorize that the sorrowful sound is the echo of a tragic event, child lost to illness, accident, or misfortune imprinted upon the building itself. Unlike typical echoes or noises, the crying appears to have a form of intelligence, shifting location and intensity, almost as though the child is searching for someone to comfort it. Other visitors interpret the phenomenon as something more sentient. Many who hear the cries report a sense of longing, an emotional weight that goes beyond mere sound. The sorrow of the child seems palpable, pressing against those who listen, compelling them to respond. Some claim that they feel an urge to kneel, to speak softly, to offer reassurance, as though the child's spirit is seeking acknowledgement and connection. The combination of auditory and emotional perception creates an experience that is deeply unsettling, yet profoundly moving. Skeptics have attempted to rationalize the sounds, attributing them to the building's acoustics, the shifting of air through old vents, or distant desert wildlife. While these explanations account for some ambient noises, they fail to explain the specificity of the phenomenon. The crying is distinctly human, distinctly childlike, and unmistakably mournful. It also appears consistently in the basement, an area with few drafts and little airflow that could mimic human sobbing. The emotional weight accompanying the sound is another factor that defies purely physical explanations. Some accounts describe the crying as coinciding with other strange occurrences. Lights in the basement flicker as the sobbing begins. Shadows move along the walls where no person could be, and a sudden coldness settles over the space. Guests have reported feeling a presence brushing past them, a gentle pressure that seems almost maternal or protective, as if the unseen child is not malicious but desperate for comfort. The combination of sensory experiences reinforces the notion that the crying is more than memory. It is an active presence seeking recognition. For those who experience the phenomenon, the crying child of the Kelso Depot leaves an indelible impression. It is a sound that lingers in the mind long after leaving the building, a sorrow that resonates in the chest, and a reminder that some presences cannot be silenced. The depot, though empty of living souls at night, is filled with echoes of those who once passed through its doors. And the child's cries serve as a poignant reminder of the human stories interwoven with the history of the Mojave Desert. The crying child of the Kelso Depot is more than a legend. It is a haunting presence, a voice from the past that reaches across time to touch the living, whether a restless spirit, a residual echo, or something beyond understanding. The sound continues to draw attention, curiosity, and fear. For anyone who ventures into the basement at night, the cries are impossible to ignore, a haunting testament to loss, longing, and the enduring imprint of those who remain, even when unseen. The Kelso Depot's beanery, once a bustling hub of activity for travelers, railroad workers, and locals passing through the desert, holds more than just memories of meals served and conversations shared. Long after the restaurant closed its doors, visitors and staff continue to report eerie occurrences that suggest the spirit of the past has refused to leave. At the center of these reports is the ghost of a former cook, a figure said to have died tragically in a kitchen accident decades ago. From the clatter of pots and pans to the smell of freshly prepared food wafting through the air, the beanery remains alive in ways that defy explanation. The phenomenon is most often noticed in the evening, when the depot is quiet and the desert wind whistles through the empty tracks outside. Patrons and curious visitors have described walking into the beanery, which has long been closed and stripped of most working equipment, only to be met with the unmistakable aroma of cooking food. Some report the smell of frying meat, sizzling vegetables, or freshly baked bread, drifting through the air as if someone is actively preparing a meal. Others have felt the sudden warmth of a stove that has long been unplugged, or noticed shadows moving across the countertops where no one is present. Staff have experienced these occurrences firsthand. One longtime employee recounted arriving early one morning to perform routine maintenance. As she stepped into the beanery, she heard the unmistakable clanging of metal against metal, the sound of pots being stirred, lids clattering, and utensils striking countertops. She froze, looking around, but the room was empty. The sound continued, coming from different corners of the kitchen, as if an invisible cook was performing the morning prep. When she called out, her voice echoed in the empty space, yet there was no response except the rhythmic clatter of the unseen hands at work. Visitors report similar experiences, often accompanied by a mix of wonder and unease. One guest describes sitting in the beanery, notebook in hand, intending to write while imagining the bustling scene that might have once filled the room. Almost immediately, she noticed the faint smell of fried eggs and coffee in the air. Within minutes, she heard a soft scrape of a pan across the counter, followed by the distant sound of a skillet being placed on a burner. But when she turned to look, the kitchen remained vacant, the lights flickering faintly above her. It was as though the cook had returned to complete their duties, unseen but intent on continuing their work even after death. Paranormal investigators who have examined the depot suggest that these manifestations are a form of residual haunting. The tragic death of the cook may have left a strong emotional imprint on the beanery, and the repeated energy of daily kitchen routines has created a lingering echo. Unlike traditional hauntings, these echoes are not malevolent. They are routine, almost mechanical, a replay of life as it once was. The clatter of pots, the warmth of the stove, the aroma of cooking, all of these may be expressions of the cook's attachment to their work and the space they once occupied. Others interpret the haunting as more interactive. Some guests have claimed that if they acknowledge the presence by saying hello or placing utensils in particular spots, the sounds respond, as though the spirit is aware of being observed. Lights sometimes flicker in time with the movement of unseen hands, and the clanging may accelerate or slow, depending on the visitor's actions. This interaction creates a palpable sense of presence. A ghostly figure moving through the kitchen, unseen but unmistakably aware. The beanery's haunting is not limited to sounds and smells. Some visitors report sudden temperature shifts, feeling warmth in one corner of the kitchen and a chill in another, as if the unseen cook is moving through the space. Others have noticed objects subtly rearranged, utensils slightly askew, lids placed in different positions, or a pot that was on the counter appearing on a stove burner without explanation. These occurrences, though subtle, reinforce the sense that the kitchen is not abandoned, but occupied by a presence tied to its history. Historical accounts suggest the cook was known for dedication and long hours. The fatal accident occurred during a busy service, and some speculate that the intensity of that final day left a permanent mark on the space. Guests often report sensing a mixture of urgency and calm in the beanery, urgency from the unfinished tasks, calm from the familiarity of the environment. The presence does not seek harm. Rather, it seems intent on continuing the work it loved, echoing the rhythms of a life interrupted too soon. Over time, the hauntings have become a defining characteristic of the Kelso Depot experience. Visitors who witness the sounds, smells, and subtle movements often leave with a lasting impression of the beanery as a place where the past is never truly gone. Staff approach the kitchen with a mixture of respect and apprehension, accepting that some elements of the depot's history cannot be explained by mechanics or electricity alone. The spirit of the cook has become intertwined with the building itself, a reminder that even in silence, the past continues to move and breathe. The beanery at Kelso Depot stands as a testament to the enduring presence of memory, work, and tragedy. The clatter of pots, the scent of cooking, the warmth of an unseen hand all serve as reminders that some lives leave imprints too strong to fade. For those who wander into the depot after dark, the beanery is more than a closed kitchen. It is a space alive with echoes of dedication, loss, and a presence that refuses to leave, continuing to serve meals long after the last diner has departed. The Kelso Depot, long abandoned and surrounded by the vast expanse of the Mojave Desert, sits as a silent witness to decades of human activity, history, and tragedy. Though trains no longer roar along its tracks, and the station has been largely deserted for years, the desert around it comes alive at night with phenomena that defy explanation. Among the depot's most mysterious hauntings are the strange lights that appear in the desert sky, captivating travelers and locals alike. These eerie glows, flickering and dancing just beyond the horizon, have sparked countless stories, theories, and chilling experiences. Those who first noticed the lights often describe them as small points of illumination hovering just above the desert floor. They move in unpredictable patterns, sometimes hovering in place, sometimes darting quickly across the open landscape. The colors are strange and otherworldly: pale blue, ghostly white, and occasionally a deep orange that seems almost alive. Unlike campfires or vehicle headlights, these lights appear without source, unconnected to any visible object or human activity. Travelers passing the depot at night frequently report seeing them, and many have stopped to watch, mesmerized and unsettled by their strange motion. One evening, a family driving along the highway near the depot pulled over after seeing several lights flicker across the desert. They described watching them for several minutes as they moved in patterns that seemed almost deliberate, circling in the distance, rising, and then vanishing entirely. The father, a skeptical man by nature, admitted feeling a creeping unease as the lights moved closer, though no vehicle or person accompanied them. By the time they drove away, the lights had disappeared, leaving only the vast emptiness of the desert and the lingering feeling of being watched. Other witnesses describe more interactive experiences. Some travelers report that as they approach, the lights retreat, vanishing behind dunes or suddenly leaping farther away. In some cases, witnesses claim to see faint silhouettes near the lights, figures that appear humanoid but fade when observed directly. One longtime visitor of the area described standing near the depot while the lights hovered over the desert. He felt an inexplicable pull, a sense that the lights were guiding him or leading him toward something hidden. Though he followed briefly, they vanished as if aware of his presence, leaving him shaken but unharmed. Paranormal enthusiasts suggest that these lights may be tied to the depot's haunted energy. The station, once a hub of constant activity, has seen joy, sorrow, and tragedy. Countless travelers pass through, some never to leave again. And the human energy left behind could be interacting with the desert landscape in unusual ways. The lights, then, may be manifestations of spirits lingering near the depot, echoes of the past attempting to make themselves known to the living. Some speculate that these are the souls of former residents or travelers who perished in accidents, their presence anchored to the area through unresolved events or strong emotional ties. Locals offer other explanations, often rooted in folklore. Some believe the lights are omens, signals of approaching danger, or reminders of lives lost. Desert nomads have told stories of wandering spirits, visible only in the faint glow of moonlight, guiding travelers or warning them away. Others claim that the lights are a natural phenomenon, linked to the desert's unique mineral composition, or the reflection of distant celestial bodies. Yet, for those who have witnessed the lights firsthand, no scientific explanation seems adequate. The movement, the color, and the timing feel deliberate, as though the lights possess intelligence beyond human understanding. The lights have also been reported to coincide with other strange occurrences at the depot. People describe feeling sudden drops in temperature, hearing whispers in the wind, or noticing shadows moving across the building's walls when the lights appear. These coincidences suggest a connection between the desert phenomena and the depot itself, reinforcing the idea that the building's haunted energy might extend beyond its walls, reaching into the surrounding landscape. For those who encounter the mysterious desert lights, the experience is a mix of awe and fear. They illuminate the darkness, yet the shadows they cast are haunting. Travelers often leave with an uneasy sense that they have glimpsed something beyond ordinary perception, a reminder that the desert, like the depot, is alive with memory and unseen presence. Some return night after night, hoping to witness the lights again, drawn by curiosity and the inexplicable connection they feel to the spectral phenomenon. The mysterious lights in the desert remain one of the Kelso Depot's most enduring and enigmatic haunting. Whether they are spirits of the past, manifestations of residual energy, or a natural phenomenon imbued with uncanny timing, they captivate and unsettle all who see them. In the vast silence of the Mojave, where the stars stretch endlessly across the sky and the wind whispers across the sand, the lights flicker and dance, reminding visitors that the depot's history and its hauntings extend far beyond its walls. Reaching out across the desert in a spectral, unrelenting glow, the Kelso Depot stands as a quiet monument to a time when the railroad brought life, commerce, and a sense of connection to the harsh expanse of the Mojave Desert. Today, the building is largely abandoned, yet it is far from silent. Among its most unsettling phenomena are the whispers that seem to emanate from the walls, themselves faint, unintelligible, and persistent, leaving visitors and staff alike with a lingering sense of unease. These are the whispers of the depot, voices that have refused to be forgotten, speaking across time in a language long lost to the living. The whispers are most commonly reported in the late hours, when the desert outside is still and the depot is empty. Guests wandering the corridors have described hearing soft murmurs rising from the walls, sometimes from corners or hidden recesses. The sounds are always just on the edge of comprehension, like fragments of words from an ancient tongue, fading before they can be fully understood. In some cases, multiple voices seem to speak at once, layering over each other in a dissonant chorus that creates a sensation of weight and presence. Staff who worked late nights often experienced the whispers firsthand. One security guard recounted patrolling the depot during a quiet evening shift. As he passed the old ticket office, he noticed a faint murmur coming from the walls. He paused, straining to listen. The words were not recognizable, yet there was a cadence to the sounds, a rhythm that suggested meaning. The whisper seemed to shift as he moved through the building, following him down hallways and into rooms, as though the walls themselves were alive, observing his passage. Despite the intensity of the sensation, no human presence was ever found. Visitors describe the whispers as more than just sounds. They are an emotional experience. Many report a sensation of being watched, or of the building itself pressing in on them, as if the voices were attempting to communicate warnings, memories, or secrets. Some have felt sudden chills along the spine, or goosebumps rising along their arms. The whispers, while not overtly threatening, carry an undertone of urgency, a desperate desire to be heard, as if the voices belonged to those who lived and died within the depot's walls, still reaching out to the living in hopes of acknowledgement. The history of Kelso Depot lends credence to these experiences. During its peak, the depot served countless travelers, families, and railroad workers passing through the desert. The building witnessed joy and reunion, but also hardship, illness, and untimely deaths. Many who spent time in the depot left with stories of tragedy or loss, and some never left at all. Paranormal researchers theorize that the whispers are the residual echoes of these individuals, imprinted onto the very structure, lingering like an invisible library of emotion and memory. The language may be unintelligible because it originates from the minds of the departed, formed in thought and emotion, rather than spoken word as we understand it today. Guests who encounter the whispers often describe patterns in the sounds. Some report that the murmurs increase when they attempt to listen closely, almost as if the voices respond to attention. Others claim that certain locations within the depot are hotspots, places where the whispers are louder or more insistent. These include the ticket office, the old dining area, and rooms that once housed railroad workers. In each of these spaces, the whispers carry a distinctive quality, a mix of sorrow, longing, and faint nostalgia that hints at the life that once filled the depot. Some visitors have attempted to interact with the whispers, speaking aloud in hopes of eliciting a response. Occasionally, those who speak report hearing a shift in tone, a subtle variation in the murmurs that feels like acknowledgement. Others feel a gentle pressure against their shoulders, as though the voices are reaching out through the walls themselves. These experiences are brief and fleeting, yet they leave a profound impression, reinforcing the idea that the whispers are more than random noise. They are a form of communication from beyond, a bridge between the living and the dead. Skeptics often attribute the sounds to structural creaks, wind, or acoustics in the old building. While some auditory phenomena can indeed be explained this way, they cannot account for the consistency of the whispers, their response to attention, or the emotional impact described by so many witnesses. The voices carry an intelligence, a presence, that transcends ordinary environmental noise. For those who encounter them, the experience is unmistakably otherworldly, a haunting that lingers long after leaving the depot. The whispers also seem to preserve fragments of the past. Longtime employees report that when the voices are strongest, they sense fleeting impressions of the depot's history. The bustle of travelers rushing through the lobby, the rhythmic clatter of trains arriving and departing, and the quiet moments of solitary reflection experienced by railroad workers during late-night shifts. These auditory echoes allow a rare glimpse into the life of the depot when it was alive. A bridge across decades that reminds listeners of the human stories embedded in the building's walls. The Kelso Depot's whispering walls remain a defining element of its haunted reputation. For visitors, they are both unsettling and mesmerizing, a constant reminder that the past is never truly gone. The voices are a testament to the lives that passed through the depot, to the sorrow, joy, and longing that remain imprinted on the building. They are a presence that cannot be ignored, and for those who listen closely, they offer a hauntingly intimate connection to the history of the Mojave Desert and the people who once called the Kelso Depot their temporary home. The whispering walls are more than a legend. They are a persistent echo of life, a subtle but undeniable proof that some voices refuse to fade. For anyone who walks the depot's hallways at night, the faint murmurs pressed against the old plaster serve as a chilling reminder that the past is alive, waiting to be heard, and still reaching out from beyond the veil. The Kelso Depot, long abandoned by the bustle of travelers and railroad workers, hides more than just memories in its worn walls. Among its most unnerving locations are the restrooms, spaces once mundane but now infamous for the strange and unsettling phenomena that occur within them. Guests and staff alike have reported experiences that defy explanation, faucets that turn on by themselves, mirrors reflecting images that do not match reality, and a pervasive sense of dread that settles over anyone who steps inside. Many first encounters happen in the evening, when the depot is quiet and the desert winds whisper against the exterior. Guests entering the restrooms often notice an immediate change in the atmosphere. Heavier, carrying a faint metallic scent that is difficult to identify. Some have reported that the door, though closed securely behind them, swings slightly open moments later, as if someone or something was moving just beyond their perception. Others describe a feeling of being watched, an intangible weight pressing against their backs, accompanied by faint whispers that cannot be traced to any source. The faucets are a common source of fear. Visitors have recounted instances where taps suddenly turn on, releasing a trickle of water even when the plumbing has been shut off or drained. The sound is often startling in the stillness of the depot, a sudden rush that echoes through the tiled room. Some have tried turning the faucets off, only to see them reactivate moments later, dripping or flowing on their own accord. One staff member described standing frozen as water poured from the sink, only to feel a sudden cold gust and hear a low sigh, as if the room itself exhaled in response. Mirrors add another layer of unease. Many guests report seeing reflections that do not correspond to reality. Shadows of figures appear behind them, or the image in the mirror lingers after the person has stepped away. Some claim to catch glimpses of faces peering back, faces, pale, hollow-eyed, sometimes distorted, and always fleeting. In some cases, the mirror seems to move independently, reflecting angles that are impossible for the viewer to occupy. A visitor once reported stepping away from the sink to leave, only to see in the mirror a figure standing where they had been, staring directly at them before fading completely. The sensation of dread that permeates the restrooms is perhaps the most pervasive phenomenon. Those who enter often describe a sudden drop in temperature, chills that raise goosebumps along their arms, and an almost suffocating weight that presses in on their chest. The feeling is difficult to ignore, leaving guests with a lingering unease long after they exit the room. Some have even described the sensation of being gently touched or brushed by an unseen hand, though no one else is present. The fear is subtle but undeniable, as if the restrooms themselves are alive with the echoes of past events and unresolved energy. Historically, the depot's restrooms were simple facilities, used by travelers, railroad workers, and staff alike. Over the decades, countless individuals passed through these spaces, some leaving abruptly, some remaining longer than expected. Paranormal investigators suggest that the haunting may be tied to the emotional and physical energy deposited by these many occupants, especially those who experience stress, illness, or trauma within the depot. The faucets, mirrors, and air may all be channels for this residual energy, manifesting as interactive and occasionally sentient phenomena. Visitors often describe a sense of communication, subtle but persistent, as though the restroom spirit is aware of their presence. Attempting to speak or call out can sometimes provoke reactions. A sudden drip of water, a flicker in the mirror, or a soft creak from behind the stalls. These interactions are brief and elusive, yet they reinforce the impression that something intelligent and watchful inhabits the space. The haunting is not overtly violent, but the psychological weight it carries can be overwhelming, leaving a lasting impression on anyone who enters. The restrooms have also been the site of visual anomalies. Staff have reported seeing shadows dart behind stall doors, or glimpses of figures reflected in faucets and metal surfaces. Lights occasionally flicker when no electrical issue is present, casting long, shifting shadows across the tiled walls. One visitor recounted the sudden appearance of a figure crouched near the floor, only to vanish when approached. These sightings, though brief, contribute to the overall atmosphere of fear and uncertainty that permeates the rooms. For those who experience the hauntings, the Kelso Depot's restrooms are more than just an unsettling curiosity. They are a portal into the lingering past. The faucets, mirrors, and shifting shadows serve as reminders of the lives that passed through the depot, of the fear, sorrow, and haste that left traces in the very architecture. Guests often leave with a sense of having glimpsed another layer of reality, one that exists alongside the familiar but remains invisible except to those willing to notice. The haunted restrooms of the Kelso Depot are a testament to the building's enduring connection to history and the unseen. They are spaces where the mundane has become extraordinary, where ordinary fixtures become channels for the past, and where the quiet moments of daily life echo through time. Visitors who step inside cannot help but feel the weight of memory pressing against them, the presence of something unseen moving just beyond perception, and the reminder that even in empty rooms, the past refuses to stay silent. For anyone who enters the depot after dark, the restrooms are a chilling, unforgettable experience, a space where faucets run on their own, mirrors betray reality, and the whispers of the past seem almost alive. The hauntings are subtle, intelligent, and deeply unsettling, leaving no doubt that the Kelso Depot is not simply a relic of the railroad era, but a living repository of memory, presence, and the unquiet spirits that refuse to leave. The Kelso Depot, long a resting point for weary travelers and bustling with railroad activity in its prime, now stands mostly silent beneath the vast expanse of the Mojave desert sky. Yet for those who walk its hallways and stairwells after dark, silence is deceptive. Among the depot's most unnerving hauntings is the phenomenon known as the unseen hand. Visitors and staff alike have reported sudden taps on the shoulder, brushes against the arm, or the faint sensation of being guided or restrained by a presence that no eye can see. The experience is fleeting, yet profoundly disconcerting, leaving those who encounter it questioning whether they are alone at all. Most reports of the unseen hand occur in the long, narrow corridors of the depot, or along the creaking stairwells that connect the main floor to the upper rooms. The sensation is sudden, a tap on the shoulder while turning a corner, the gentle brush of a hand along the forearm as one walks past a doorway, or a fleeting pressure behind the back that seems almost deliberate. Each encounter shares a common thread. The person experiencing it turns quickly to find the space empty. No one is there, yet the physical impression remains vivid and undeniable. One visitor recounted climbing the wooden stairwell to reach an upper-level guest room. Midway through, she felt a firm but gentle tap on her right shoulder. As though someone was urging her to stop, she spun around, heart racing, but the staircase was empty. The sensation lingered for a few moments, the invisible weight of a presence pressing lightly against her. Despite the absence of any rational explanation, she felt certain that she had not imagined the touch. Moments later, a draft of cold air swept through the stairwell, reinforcing the eerie feeling that something unseen had been there, watching her, guiding her, or simply acknowledging her presence. Staff members report similar experiences, particularly those working late hours when the depot is quiet. One longtime employee described patrolling the hallways during a routine evening check. As he rounded a corner near the old ticket office, he felt a gentle brush along his arm, as if someone had lightly squeezed him. He froze, looking up and down the corridor, but no one was present. Later, while reviewing security cameras, he found no evidence of another person in the hallway. The physical sensation remained, however, lingering in his memory like a phantom imprint. The phenomenon is not violent, nor does it seem malicious, but it carries an unmistakable weight. Guests describe feelings of sudden unease or alertness immediately following the touch, a subtle shift in the atmosphere that makes the corridors feel smaller, more immediate. Some report a strange warmth in the area where the hand brushed them, as if residual energy had briefly transferred from one plane of existence to another. Others have described a simultaneous feeling of guidance, a subtle sensation that the unseen hand is either leading them forward or holding them back. Paranormal investigators who have studied the depot suggest that the unseen hand may be a form of intelligent haunting rather than a residual echo. Unlike residual hauntings, which replay events mechanically, these interactions appear purposeful. The taps, brushes, and pressures often seem timed to coincide with movement, as though the spirit is acknowledging a presence, attempting to communicate, or even playfully interacting with those who traverse the hallways. There is an almost conversational quality to the phenomena. The unseen entity reaches out, and the living respond with movement, attention, or caution. Historical context provides further insight. The Kelso Depot has witnessed decades of human activity, from the constant motion of railroad workers to travelers passing through the desert on their way to distant destinations. The building has seen both joy and tragedy, lost farewells, illness, and even untimely deaths. Some theorists suggest that these intense emotional experiences have left imprints on the depot itself, manifesting as tangible, interactive presences. The unseen hand may be a lingering expression of those who spent their lives within the depot, now aware of the living and seeking to make their presence felt. Not all experiences are the same. Some people report a single tap on the shoulder, brief and startling. Others describe multiple touches, as though a presence is moving along the walls, brushing against them repeatedly. Occasionally, a hand seems to gently grip an arm, pausing for a heartbeat before releasing. In some instances, the touches are accompanied by faint whispers, almost imperceptible, but reinforcing the sensation of intelligent interaction. These differences make each encounter unique, but all share the same undeniable element: a physical impression made by a presence no one can see. Skeptics argue that the sensations are caused by drafts, loose clothing, or psychological suggestion, yet the consistency of reports and their specificity challenge these explanations. Many who have experienced the phenomenon are seasoned travelers or staff with no previous inclination toward the paranormal. They report the sensations occurring in the same locations: hallways, stairwells, and near particular doors, reinforcing the idea that the occurrences are tied to the depot itself rather than individual perception. The unseen hand also seems to leave a lingering emotional impression. Witnesses describe a heightened awareness after an encounter, a sense that the building itself is alive and responsive. Some feel a mixture of caution and curiosity, while others are left with a profound sense of connection to the depot's past inhabitants. The phenomenon is subtle, yet powerful. reminding anyone who walks the hallways that the Kelso Depot is more than just a relic of history. It is a space where the past and present intersect in tangible, often startling ways. Ultimately, the unseen hand of the Kelso Depot is a haunting that bridges the ordinary and the extraordinary. It leaves no visible trace, no photograph to confirm its presence, yet the physical and emotional effects are undeniable. For those who feel the brush of its touch, it is a chilling and unforgettable reminder that the depot is a living repository of history, memory, and lingering spirits, forever reaching out to make contact with the world of the living. The Kelso Depot, a relic of a bustling railroad era, sits quietly amidst the desolate expanse of the Mojave Desert, its weathered walls holding stories of travelers, workers, and countless comings and goings. Yet, beneath the stillness, the depot harbors secrets that refuse to rest. Among its most unnerving features is the old wall-mounted telephone in the main office, a device that has long been disconnected from any active lines, but continues to ring, often at odd and inexplicable hours. Visitors, staff, and paranormal enthusiasts alike have reported experiences with the haunted telephone that defy logical explanation, adding another layer of mystery to the already eerie building. The phenomenon is most commonly reported late at night, when the depot is empty and the desert outside is dark and silent. The sudden, shrill ringing of the telephone can startle anyone nearby, breaking the stillness with a sound that seems impossibly out of place. Some witnesses describe the tone as unusually loud, vibrating through the walls and echoing down the empty corridors. Others note that the ringing does not always follow the pattern of standard telephones. It can start and stop abruptly, pulse in irregular intervals, or even seem to respond to footsteps approaching or receding from the room. Visitors who answer the call describe an unnerving silence on the other end. There is no voice, no static, no indication of connection, only a void that feels almost deliberate, as if the caller on the other end is aware of the person holding the receiver, but chooses not to speak. Some have reported faint whispers, unintelligible murmurs, or the sound of distant footsteps accompanying the silence. A few claim to have heard faint breathing or the rustle of clothing, as though someone or something was present, observing their every move. The effect is immediate and profound. A creeping sense of unease settles over anyone who picks up the phone, making them question whether they are alone. The haunted telephone is not limited to the office. Staff working night shifts have described hearing the phone ring from distant hallways or rooms, even when they are certain no one else is in the building. One employee recounted sitting at a desk in the back office when the ringing began in the adjacent hallway. By the time they reached the source, the receiver was hanging silently, as though no call had occurred at all. Others have observed the receiver moving slightly, shifting as if held briefly by invisible hands before returning to its resting position. These physical and auditory anomalies suggest that the haunting is more than mere coincidence or faulty equipment. It is a consistent, interactive presence within the depot. Paranormal investigators visiting the depot have documented numerous encounters with the telephone. Using audio recording equipment, they have captured the distinct sound of the bell ringing at intervals with no discernible cause. Electronic devices nearby often malfunction during these occurrences, with radios, flashlights, or cameras flickering on and off inexplicably. Some researchers theorize that the phone acts as a conduit, a residual portal linking the energy of the past with the present. The calls themselves may be echoes of conversations long forgotten, attempts at communication from spirits who once relied on the device, or manifestations of the depot's intense emotional energy. Historical context provides a chilling backdrop to these experiences. The Kelso Depot served as a hub of activity, hosting travelers, railroad workers, and local residents who relied on the station as a lifeline. Many important conversations, farewells, and urgent messages were conducted over its telephones. Some of the depot's occupants endured tragedy, illness, or sudden death while the phone was in use. Paranormal theorists suggest that the intense emotions and unresolved energy associated with these events may have been imprinted upon the telephone, causing it to ring long after it was disconnected. In this sense, the phone serves as both a physical object and a vessel for memories, capable of bridging the gap between life and death. Those who have experienced the haunted telephone often describe an emotional response as strong as the auditory phenomenon itself. Fear, curiosity, and a strange sense of anticipation mix, leaving witnesses on edge for hours afterward. Some have tried to speak into the receiver, calling out to whoever or whatever might be on the other end, only to be met with silence or faint, unintelligible responses. A few have reported feeling a presence near them while holding the receiver, a cold draft at their back, or the sensation of unseen eyes watching, reinforcing the impression that the depot is alive with invisible observers. Not all encounters are the same. Some people hear only a single ring, while others describe extended periods of ringing accompanied by subtle movements of the receiver or faint sounds from the line. The unpredictability adds to the terror. There is no schedule, no pattern, and no way to anticipate when the phone will call next. This randomness makes the experience feel personal, as if the phone selects who it wishes to communicate with, choosing moments when the building is quiet and the observer is most vulnerable. Skeptics argue that old wiring, acoustic phenomena, or psychological suggestion could explain some reports. Yet the consistency, intensity, and emotional impact of these experiences challenge rational explanations. Witnesses from different backgrounds, with no prior knowledge of the depot's history, report strikingly similar encounters, suggesting a phenomenon rooted in the building itself rather than imagination. The phone's ringing, the silence on the line, and the sense of presence form a pattern too specific and sustained to dismiss. The haunted telephone of the Kelso Depot remains one of the most compelling elements of its paranormal reputation. It is more than a relic of the past. It is an active conduit for memory, emotion, and perhaps even lingering consciousness. For those who hear its sudden, unexpected ring, it is a chilling reminder that the depot's history is never truly silent. The echoes of past conversations, the unresolved emotions of long-departed souls, and the mystery of the unseen presence all converge in the simple act of picking up the receiver, making the haunted telephone a timeless testament to the depot's enduring mysteries and the invisible occupants who continue to linger within its walls. The Kelso Depot, standing quietly in the desolate Mojave Desert, has long been a hub of history, tragedy, and mystery. Though trains no longer thunder across its tracks, and the building is largely empty, the presence of the past is never far away. Among the depot's most compelling hauntings is that of the ghostly engineer, a railroad worker who met a tragic end and whose spirit is said to linger within the walls, forever watching the tracks he once operated with devotion. Visitors and staff have recounted eerie encounters with this spectral figure, whose gaze is often fixed on the horizon, as if anticipating a train that will never arrive. Accounts of the ghostly engineer often begin in the control room, a space once alive with the clatter of levers, the hum of telegraphs, and the sharp commands of workers coordinating arrivals and departures. Witnesses report seeing a figure standing motionless behind the control panel or near the windows that overlook the tracks. He is described as tall, clad in a railroad uniform, often with a cap shadowing his face. His eyes, or the hollow impression where eyes should be, seem to peer into the distance with unwavering focus. Those who enter the room feel immediately observed, as though the engineer is aware of every movement, every breath. Yet when approached, he vanishes, leaving behind only the faint scent of oil, coal, and the metallic temps of the rails. One night, a visitor exploring the depot recounted ascending the narrow staircase to the control room just as the sun dipped below the horizon. As they reached the top, a chill filled the air, and the floorboards creaked underfoot. Through the window, they saw a man standing rigidly, hands resting on the edge of the console, staring out toward the long-abandoned tracks. Hesitant but curious, the visitor called out, and the figure slowly turned, revealing a face pale and indistinct, then disappeared entirely, leaving only a faint echo of footsteps and a distant hum of memory. The encounter left them shaken, yet compelled to return, drawn by the enigmatic presence of the ghostly engineer. Staff members working late into the evening have had similar experiences. Many report sudden drops in temperature upon entering the control room, followed by the unmistakable feeling of being watched. Some hear the faint click of levers or the ghostly hiss of a train whistle, though no equipment is active. Occasionally, the floorboards groan under weight that is invisible, and shadows shift against the walls as though the figure is moving, pacing while waiting for a train that exists only in memory. The sightings are never aggressive or threatening, but they are profoundly unsettling, leaving those who witness them with the feeling that the depot is alive with residual purpose. Historical accounts shed light on the engineer's tragic backstory. He was a dedicated railroad worker, responsible for managing the arrival and departure of trains through Kelso. One fateful day, an accident claimed his life, an unexpected derailment. While he was ensuring the safe passage of passengers, the tragedy left an indelible mark not only on the community, but also, according to paranormal theorists, on the depot itself. The intense emotions surrounding his death, the fear, urgency, and dedication may have become imprinted on the building, giving rise to the persistent manifestation of his spirit. Visitors often describe a unique sense of temporal displacement in the control room. The ghostly engineer seems to exist simultaneously in the past and present, tied to his duty even after death. Witnesses sometimes feel as though time slows when they are in his presence. The air is thick with anticipation, as if a train is about to roar into the station, yet nothing arrives. This creates a haunting duality. The room is empty, yet full. Quiet, yet brimming with unseen activity. The engineer's apparition becomes a living reminder of the depot's history, the human effort and devotion that once kept the rails alive. Some have attempted to communicate with him, speaking into the emptiness, asking questions, or simply acknowledging his presence. While there is no verbal response, subtle signs indicate awareness. Lights flicker when the visitor approaches, a distant whistle resonates through the tracks, or a faint shadow shifts across the control room. These reactions suggest that the engineer's spirit is not merely a residual echo, but possesses a form of intelligence, a consciousness bound to the depot by duty, loyalty, and unresolved purpose. Others have noted that the ghostly engineer is rarely seen alone. Often, his appearances coincide with other phenomena in the depot. The clattering of loose tools, the distant rumble of non-existent trains, or the faint scent of coal and oil. Some researchers theorize that these signs are residual memories of the depot's operational past, activated by the presence of witnesses. The engineer's manifestation may act as a conduit, connecting the living to the many layers of human activity and emotion that once defined the station. The ghostly engineer is also tied to the depot's most mysterious moments. Visitors who report sightings often experience an uncanny sense of timing, such as appearing moments before a scheduled train would have arrived, or during the precise hour of his death anniversary. These coincidences reinforce the impression that the engineer is bound not only to the depot, but to the railroad itself, eternally performing his duty, even as the world outside has moved on. For those who encounter him, the experience is deeply emotional. Fear, awe, and curiosity intermingle as the engineer stands silently at the console, watching, waiting, a sentinel of a bygone era. The manifestation leaves no lasting damage, no physical trace, yet the psychological impact is profound. Witnesses describe a lingering presence long after leaving the control room, as if part of the depot's history has followed them home. The Kelso Depot's ghostly engineer is more than a tale of spectral appearances. He is a living echo of dedication, tragedy, and the human connection to the railroad. His unwavering vigilance, haunting yet silent, transforms the control room into a portal where past and present intersect. Those who venture into the depot may never see him, but for those who do, the experience is unforgettably. Reminder that some spirits remain bound to their duty, waiting endlessly for a train that will never come. Forever watching over the tracks they loved in life. The Kelso Depot, long a cornerstone of railroad travel in the Mojave Desert, has seen countless travelers, workers, and visitors pass through its halls. Though trains no longer roar along its tracks, the building remains a place where the past lingers, its history embedded in the very walls and floors. Among the depot's most unnerving features is the old service elevator, a small metal lift that seems to defy both logic and gravity. Staff and visitors alike have reported that the elevator operates on its own, moving between floors without explanation, as if guided by an unseen hand. Many believe it is the spirit of a former elevator operator, still dutifully performing his tasks long after death. The elevator sits at the center of the depot, a relic of early 20th century design, complete with worn brass railings, polished wood paneling, and a small metal cage that opens with a sliding door. Its mechanical workings, though outdated, are carefully maintained by the depot staff. Yet no amount of maintenance has explained its ghostly behavior. Those who have witnessed it moving alone describe the elevator humming softly, the cables creaking as the car glides smoothly between floors without anyone inside. Sometimes it pauses mid-floor, as though waiting for a passenger who will never arrive, before continuing its journey. One visitor recounted a chilling experience late one evening while exploring the depot. Hearing a faint worry sound from the shaft, he looked toward the elevator and saw it descend slowly, its doors opening with a soft clang. Expecting to see someone inside, he peered in, but the car was empty. Hesitant, he watched as it ascended again, stopping briefly on each floor, as though following an invisible schedule. The visitor felt an overwhelming sense of being observed, a quiet insistence that the elevator's movements were deliberate, purposeful, and watched over by a presence unseen. Staff members report similar incidents, often during the quietest hours of the night. One longtime employee described ascending to the second floor, only to hear the familiar hum of the elevator moving on its own. When she checked, the lift had stopped at the first floor with its doors wide open, though no one had called it. On other occasions, the elevator has been seen moving up and down in rapid succession, then suddenly coming to a smooth halt, as if obeying some invisible operator. These occurrences have been documented repeatedly, leading many to accept that the phenomenon is not a malfunction but a haunting. Paranormal investigators have studied the elevator extensively. Using motion sensors, cameras, and audio equipment, they have captured the sound of cables moving, the faint clatter of the elevator car's metal frame, and occasional creaks that resemble footsteps. Cameras sometimes pick up subtle shadows within the car or fleeting glimpses of a figure standing silently as it ascends or descends. Investigators note that the elevator never moves randomly. Its actions appear purposeful, responding to unseen factors or perhaps following the patterns of its former operator, who may have spent decades shuttling passengers between floors during his lifetime. Historical accounts suggest why the elevator might be haunted. The depot, at its height, relied on staff to ensure the smooth operation of travelers' journeys. The elevator operator was a central figure, responsible not only for moving people and goods between floors, but also for maintaining a sense of order in the bustling station. Many visitors remember tales of a kind, meticulous man who performed his duties with quiet diligence. Tragically, he died suddenly while on the job, his life ending as he continued to serve the depot he loved. It is this unresolved duty, some believe, that binds his spirit to the elevator, compelling him to continue his rounds long after death. Encounters with the haunted elevator are not always visual. Witnesses report feeling sudden chills when standing nearby, the air around the lift growing inexplicably cold. Others describe an almost tangible presence, a sensation of someone hovering just out of sight, observing their every movement. Occasionally, faint whispers are heard through the metal walls of the shaft, fragments of speech, or a soft voice giving directions. Some speculate these are echoes of the operator's lifetime of routine and attention, imprinted onto the elevator itself. Those who have stepped inside the elevator during one of these paranormal events often describe a profound sense of temporal distortion. The ride feels longer than it should, as though the car is moving through both space and time simultaneously. Floors seem to shift unpredictably. The hum of the machinery is interspersed with distant echoes of footsteps or murmured instructions. and the faint scent of oil and metal mixed with an unidentifiable, almost human aroma pervades the air. Passengers sometimes report feelings of reassurance, as if the operator's spirit is ensuring their safe passage, even though no one else is present. Skeptics argue that the elevator's movements could be explained by mechanical issues, drafts, or electrical anomalies. However, the consistency of reports, the specificity of the experiences, and the patterns in which the elevator moves make such explanations insufficient. Staff who have worked at the depot for decades testify that these events are not random or coincidental. The elevator seems guided by intelligence, by a presence aware of its surroundings and intent on continuing a routine it followed in life. The haunted elevator of the Kelso Depot is a haunting that blends history, duty, and the uncanny. It moves silently through the building, carrying memories of the past, and reminds all who witness it that some spirits remain tethered to the world through their work, their habits, and the spaces they cherished. Visitors may never see the operator's full figure, nor hear him speak, but the presence is unmistakable. The lift glides on its own. Doors open and close without explanation, and those who enter feel the weight of a watchful, loyal, spiritan, unseen custodian of the depot, forever performing his duties, ensuring that the echoes of the past continue to move within the walls of the present. The Kelso Depot, standing quietly in the Mojave Desert, has long been a crossroads of travelers, workers, and history. Its empty halls and weathered walls hold echoes of the past conversations, footsteps, and the many lives that once passed through its doors. Yet among the depot's most mysterious occurrences is an incident involving a single, enigmatic object, a package found in the lost and found, seemingly delivered from beyond the grave. The story of this package has become one of the most compelling and chilling tales associated with the depot, leaving staff and visitors alike questioning the boundaries between the living and the dead. The incident began late one evening when the depot's custodian was performing a routine check of the lost and found. Among the usual assortment of forgotten gloves, hats, and luggage, he noticed a small, neatly wrapped package sitting alone on the top shelf. There was no record of it arriving by mail, no note explaining its origin, and no indication that any traveler had recently left it behind. What immediately drew attention, however, was the name written on the package. It belonged to a man who had died decades earlier, a former railroad worker who had been a fixture at the depot during its busiest years. Curiosity and unease gripped the custodian as he carefully retrieved the package. It was heavier than it appeared, wrapped in plain brown paper and tied with a string that seemed unusually pristine for something left in a dusty lost and found. The handwriting was elegant, flowing, and unmistakably from another era, with looping letters and meticulous penmanship. There was no return address, no stamp, nothing to suggest how it had arrived. Its mere presence in the depot felt impossible, as though the building itself had conjured it into existence. When the package was opened, the contents stunned those present. Inside were several personal items that had belonged to the deceased man, objects that should have been long gone or buried with him. A pocket watch, polished but showing signs of age, ticked faintly despite having been stored for decades. A folded handkerchief embroidered with the man's initials. A small notebook containing handwritten notes about train schedules, and a silver key, whose purpose was unknown, were also inside. Every item bore a connection to the man's life at the depot, a period when he had dedicated himself to the smooth operation of trains and the care of passengers. Each object carried a presence, a weight that felt almost sentient, as if it had been waiting patiently to be returned to this place. Witnesses to the discovery describe an immediate, chilling shift in the atmosphere. The air seemed to thicken, carrying the faint scent of coal smoke and oil from the depot's operational days. Shadows stretched longer than they should, and a subtle hum, like the distant whistle of a train, filled the room. Some staff claimed they felt a presence behind them, just out of sight, watching and waiting with quiet expectation. It was as if the deceased man himself had orchestrated the package's arrival, ensuring that someone would uncover it and recognize the significance of its contents. Attempts to trace the origin of the package proved futile. The depot had no record of recent deliveries, no way for a parcel to have arrived unnoticed, and the building had been mostly empty for years. Investigators and paranormal researchers were called in, and while they examined the package and the lost and found area thoroughly, they could find no logical explanation for its appearance. Some suggested it could have been a clever hoax, but the precise historical accuracy of the contents, combined with the absence of anyone with motive or opportunity, made such theories improbable. The package became the subject of intense curiosity for those connected to the depot. Visitors requested to see it, even if only briefly, and employees often recounted the story to travelers, emphasizing the feeling of awe and unease it inspired. Some witnesses reported minor paranormal activity in the days following the discovery. Faint tapping in the walls near the lost and found, a pocket watch ticking in synchrony with no source of power, and occasional glimpses of a shadowy figure standing near the room, vanishing when approached. These subtle manifestations suggested a connection between the package and the lingering spirit of the man to whom it had belonged. The man's family, when contacted, recognized the items immediately. They confirmed that the pocket watch, handkerchief, and notebook were personal possessions that had been lost or misplaced long ago. For them, the package was more than a mystery. It was a reunion with a loved one, a tangible link to someone who had passed away decades earlier. Their emotional response reinforced the belief held by many that the package had arrived under supernatural circumstances. A final message or gift from beyond the veil, delivered with purpose and care. For those who encountered the package, the experience was both haunting and comforting. There was a sense that the man's spirit remained near the depot, attentive and connected to the space where he had spent so much of his life. The appearance of the package served as a reminder that some connections persist beyond death, that objects can carry memory, and that the depot itself retains traces of every person who ever worked or traveled there. The lost and found, a place meant for forgotten items, became a portal to the past, a channel through which the living and the dead could briefly intersect. The story of the mysterious package at the Kelso Depot remains one of the building's most compelling hauntings. Its unexplained arrival, its historically accurate contents, and the subtle manifestations that followed continued to intrigue visitors and staff alike. Whether it was a message from the beyond, a residual imprint of past life, or a phenomenon that defies human understanding, the package stands as a testament to the depot's enduring mysteries, a reminder that some presences and some connections refuse to be forgotten, waiting patiently for the right moment to reveal themselves. The Kelso Depot, a long-abandoned railroad station in the heart of the Mojave Desert, holds within its walls a wealth of history and mysteries that defy explanation. Among its most chilling features is the old piano in the lounge, a relic of a bygone era when travelers and railroad workers would gather for music and conversation. Though decades have passed since the depot's heyday, the piano continues to claim attention, not for its appearance, but for the music that sometimes drifts from its keys without human touch. Visitors and staff alike describe the experience as haunting, surreal, and unforgettable, a reminder that some memories linger longer than the living. The piano itself is an upright model, its wooden frame darkened by age, the varnish cracked in places, and the keys yellowed from decades of use. In its prime, it provided lively accompaniment to laughter, conversation, and occasional dancing. Now, it sits in quiet dignity, an artifact among the empty chairs and worn tables of the lounge. Yet, during the late hours of the night, when the desert wind whistles outside and the depot's halls are empty, the piano awakens on its own. Soft, deliberate notes fill the air, forming melodies that are both melancholic and eerily beautiful. Those who have witnessed the piano's haunting music often describe a mixture of awe and fear. One evening, a traveler passing through the depot on a stormy night sought shelter in the lounge. As he warmed himself by a small, flickering lamp, he suddenly heard the soft strains of a waltz. The melody was clear, precise, and undeniably coming from the piano, yet no one was sitting at the bench. His heart raced as he stood, scanning the room for any sign of a player, but the lounge remained empty. The music continued, each note carrying the weight of emotion, then gradually faded into silence, as if the piano itself had grown tired of being heard. Staff who maintained the depot recount similar experiences. Many have arrived early in the morning to find the piano keys still vibrating, the faint scent of old polish lingering in the air, or sheet music fluttering slightly as though disturbed by unseen hands. Some employees claim to have witnessed the piano playing while they were in the room, only for the sound to stop the moment they approached, leaving an eerie stillness in its place. Over time, the phenomenon became accepted as one of the depot's many spectral quirks, a haunting both beautiful and unsettling. Paranormal investigators have studied the piano extensively. Audio recordings capture the self-playing notes, sometimes forming complete songs, other times just single, lingering notes. Motion sensors detect no movement near the piano, and the air is usually still. Yet the keys depress with mechanical precision. Some cameras have caught fleeting shadows or indistinct figures seated at the piano bench for just a moment before vanishing. These occurrences suggest a presence, a ghostly performer who has not abandoned the lounge, even after death. Historical accounts provide context for the haunting. The piano was once played by a young woman who served as the depot's unofficial entertainer. She would perform for travelers, employees, and railroad workers, her music bringing comfort during long waits and harsh desert nights. Tragically, she died suddenly in an accident at the depot, leaving her talent and passion unfinished. Many believe her spirit remains bound to the piano, continuing to play for anyone who lingers long enough to hear. The melodies are said to reflect her emotions, sometimes joyous, sometimes mournful, capturing moments of her life as if she were reliving them in the afterlife. Guests who encounter the piano's music often report physical sensations in addition to hearing the notes. Some feel a cold breeze sweep through the lounge, while others notice the room growing inexplicably heavy, as though time itself slows in the presence of the piano. Occasionally, listeners describe a sensation of being watched, though when they turn, the lounge appears empty. The experience is intimate and unsettling, as if the music is meant specifically for the person who hears it, a private performance from a world just beyond their own. Skeptics attribute the phenomenon to environmental factors, wind shifting through the building, temperature changes affecting the strings, or mechanical quirks of the piano itself. Yet the consistency and specificity of the experiences, combined with eyewitness accounts of the keys moving without physical cause, make natural explanations insufficient. The melodies are too deliberate, the timing too precise, and the emotional resonance too strong to be mere coincidence. Even the most skeptical visitors leave the lounge with an unshakable feeling that the piano is alive in some otherworldly way. For many, the haunted piano serves as a poignant reminder of the depot's layered history. It embodies the lives, joys, and tragedies of those who once filled the space with music and movement. It is a bridge between the living and the dead, a conduit through which memories and spirits continue to interact with the present. Travelers who hear its notes often describe the experience as both beautiful and terrifying, a fleeting connection to the past. A ghostly performance meant to be witnessed but never touched. The piano continues to play, its melodies echoing through the empty depot long after the last train has departed and the last visitor has gone. Its haunting music is a testament to the presence that lingers, the spirit that refuses to be forgotten, and the mysteries of a place where time seems to bend. In the lounge of the Kelso Depot, the old piano waits patiently, keys poised and ready to share its spectral songs with anyone brave enough to listen, offering a haunting performance that bridges life, death, and the music that endures forever. The Kelso Depot, once a bustling hub for railroad travelers, now sits quietly in the Mojave Desert, its tracks long silent and its platforms largely abandoned. Yet the building and its surrounding areas remain alive with stories of the past, some of which refuse to stay buried. Among the most chilling of these stories is that of the ghostly conductor, a man whose life ended tragically in a train accident. but whose presence continues to linger at the depot, demanding attention and stirring unease among those who encounter him. Witnesses describe the conductor as a tall figure, always impeccably dressed in the uniform of his trade. His hat sits perfectly upon his head, his coat buttoned neatly, and his posture exudes the authority and precision of a man who once controlled the comings and goings of hundreds of passengers every day. Yet there is something intangible about his presence, a sense of displacement, as if he belongs to another time, forever caught between duty and death. Travelers passing through the depot late at night have reported seeing him on the platform, gesturing toward invisible trains or calling out names to passengers who are not there. One particularly vivid encounter was reported by a railroad historian who had come to the depot to document its history. As he wandered along the platform in the fading light, he noticed a figure in the distance. At first, he assumed it was a fellow visitor or a worker performing maintenance, but as he drew closer, the man appeared to be giving instructions to whom or what he could not tell. The historian watched as the conductor signaled to empty space, his voice carrying commands that seemed perfectly rational, yet completely unheeded. The historian felt a shiver run down his spine, realizing that the figure was entirely alone, yet performing his duties with utmost seriousness. The haunting is not limited to visual sightings. Staff and visitors report hearing the sharp clatter of a conductor's whistle in the dead of night, the barked instructions of a man managing a train crew, or the distant roar of wheels on tracks that no longer exist. Some have even claimed to hear the low murmur of passengers responding, though no one is present. The sound carries a sense of urgency and routine, as if the conductor's spirit is compelled to maintain the operations he once oversaw, even when there is nothing to operate. Historical records provide context for the haunting. The conductor was a respected figure, known for his dedication and discipline. One fateful day, while ensuring the safe departure of a train, an accident occurred, a derailment caused by mechanical failure. He perished in the incident, his life ending while performing the duties he had always taken seriously. Witnesses say that, from that moment onward, his presence has never left the depot. Some interpret his continued activity as a reflection of unfinished business, a spirit bound to the platform by a sense of responsibility and duty that transcends death. Encounters with the ghostly conductor often evoke a mixture of fear and awe. Some visitors describe feeling a sudden chill as they approach the platform, an unnatural cold that seems concentrated around him. Others report a sensation of being watched, as though the conductor's eyes, though fixed on invisible trains, perceive every movement in the vicinity. A few witnesses have tried to speak to him, calling out in curiosity or alarm, only to have him ignore their presence entirely, focus solely on the phantom passengers and trains that define his existence. Paranormal researchers have documented numerous incidents related to the conductor. Motion-activated cameras capture shadows crossing the platform or indistinct figures near the rail tracks, though no human activity can account for them. Audio devices record whistles, footsteps, and muffled voices that disappear when investigators approach. While skeptics attempt to attribute these occurrences to natural phenomena, wind, echoes, or electrical interference, the patterns are strikingly specific. The figure appears in areas historically associated with his duties, moves in ways consistent with someone directing trains, and even reappears in the same spots for multiple witnesses. Some believe the conductor's spirit serves a dual purpose. On one hand, he is bound by duty, replaying the tasks he performed during his life, ensuring that every imaginary train departs on time. On the other hand, he is a sentinel, a lingering presence that guards the depot and its history. Travelers and visitors often feel an unspoken warning in his presence, a reminder of the danger and power associated with the railways he once oversaw. His continued activity turns the depot from a silent relic into a place where history, memory, and the supernatural converge. Interestingly, the conductor's ghost has been reported even during times when the depot is filled with tourists and researchers. Witnesses note that while people bustle about, the figure continues his work unnoticed, blending into the background, as though the world around him has changed, but he has not. His presence is a subtle, persistent echo of the depot's operational past, a bridge between the era of roaring trains and the present emptiness that surrounds the tracks. For those who encounter the ghostly conductor, the experience is both unsettling and humbling. The platform, once a place of hurried arrivals and departures, becomes a stage for a performance from beyond the grave. Witnesses are reminded that some spirits remain tethered to the world through their roles, responsibilities, and the moments that defined their lives. The conductor's figure, whistle, and unseen passengers serve as enduring symbols of the depot's history, a spectral reminder that the past is never truly gone, each hoping to catch a glimpse of the ghostly conductor. And while his motives remain unknowable, his presence is undeniable. He walks the platform, directing phantom trains and unseen passengers, bound by a sense of duty that death could not release. In the quiet desert nights, when the air is still and the tracks lie empty, the ghostly conductor persists, a living echo of a life defined by responsibility, discipline, and the eternal rhythm of the rail. The Kelso Depot, long a silent witness to the comings and goings of countless travelers, is a place steeped in history and mystery. Among the many stories whispered by locals and visitors alike, none is more unnerving than that of the phantom luggage. Deep within the depot's storage rooms, luggage appears without explanation, belonging to passengers who never arrived. These are not ordinary cases. They are filled with personal items, meticulously packed as if the owners were preparing for journeys that would never happen. The first reports of the phantom luggage came from depot staff who noticed suitcases appearing in the storage rooms after months of emptiness. A leather trunk might appear near the far wall, its brass corners tarnished yet intact, or a cloth bag carefully placed on a shelf, as though someone had just set it down. Staff would check the registry to see if any travelers had arrived or departed, only to find no record of the luggage's owner. The items inside were just as mysterious. Neatly folded clothing, a pair of polished shoes, personal letters, even small keepsakes, carefully wrapped. There was never a note explaining the appearance. No ticket to indicate a passenger's arrival, just luggage, seemingly dropped from another world. Visitors to the depot have reported encountering the luggage under unusual circumstances. Some claim to see a shadowy figure placing a suitcase down, only to vanish when approached. Others hear the faint sound of zippers or the soft thud of a trunk being set on the floor, though the storage rooms are otherwise empty. One visitor recalled entering the depot late at night, guided by curiosity and a sense of unease. As he approached the storage area, he saw a suitcase sitting upright, its leather gleaming under the dim light. Tentatively, he opened it, only to find neatly folded garments and a journal with the entries of a traveler who had never existed in the depot's records. The visitor left quickly, haunted by the sensation that the luggage had been waiting for him to arrive. The phantom luggage seems to appear at random intervals, sometimes during the day, sometimes late at night. It is never damaged, never misplaced, and never removed by anyone other than those who discover it. Investigators and historians who have studied the phenomenon suggest that the luggage is connected to the depot's darker history, when travelers vanished mysteriously, leaving behind only the faintest traces of their presence. Some believe these spectral travelers are still trying to make their journeys, their luggage materializing as a residual imprint of their plans. Others claim the luggage itself is a kind of liminal marker, a connection between the living world and the spirits trapped within the depot. The contents of the phantom luggage often add to the unsettling nature of the phenomenon. Letters and personal effects are typically dated decades earlier, corresponding to periods when the depot was in its heyday. Clothing is neatly folded, shoes polished, and toiletries arranged as though a traveler had paused briefly before embarking. Some researchers speculate that the luggage represents a moment frozen in time, an echo of the daily routines and preparations of passengers who never made it to their destination. There is a precision to the placement and organization that suggests a deliberate act, not mere random spectral activity. Many who have encountered the luggage describe a profound emotional response. There is a sense of absence, a feeling that the travelers were once there, but have been erased from reality. Some feel an almost overwhelming empathy for the unseen owners, imagining the anticipation, excitement, or anxiety they must have felt as they packed their belongings for a journey that would never happen. Others feel a creeping dread, a fear that the depot itself is a place where time, space, and reality fold, allowing glimpses of lives that ended too soon or in ways that remain unexplained. The phenomenon is not limited to physical observation. Witnesses often report other strange occurrences in conjunction with the luggage. Lights flicker near the storage rooms, cold spots appear along the walls, and faint murmurs echo through the empty halls. Some say the luggage is not just an object, but a conduit, channeling the presence of the lost travelers into the depot's physical space. It is as if the depot itself refuses to let go, preserving these travelers' hopes and plans in a tangible form, even decades after their disappearance. The phantom luggage has become an enduring symbol of the Kelso Depot's haunted nature. It is a reminder that the depot is more than a building. It is a place where lives intersected, where journeys began and ended, and where the boundary between the living and the dead is fragile and porous. For those who discover a piece of the luggage, it is a haunting encounter, one that evokes history, loss, and the uncanny. The neatly packed clothing, the journals, the small personal tokens all serve as silent witnesses to stories that never reach their conclusion, echoing through the depot in the stillness of the desert night. Visitors leave with a mixture of awe and unease, carrying the memory of the phantom luggage with them. Its presence is subtle, yet powerful, a tangible reminder that some travelers never truly depart, that some journeys remain forever unfinished, and that in the Kelso Depot, the past is never entirely gone. Even in the silent desert, among the empty tracks and abandoned platforms, the luggage waits, as if holding the lives of those who vanished just beyond reach. The Kelso Depot, a historic landmark in the heart of the Mojave Desert, stands as a quiet testament to a bygone era of steam engines, bustling passengers, and endless journeys through the desert landscape. Today, the depot appears abandoned to the casual observer, its wooden platforms weathered, the tracks rusted and still, but for those who pay attention, there is life in the silence, and some of that life is decidedly spectral. Among the depot's most infamous hauntings is the ticket booth, a small, glass-enclosed space that once teemed with activity, selling tickets for travelers rushing to catch their trains. Visitors and staff alike have reported strange occurrences there, centering around a figure that appears behind the counter, selling tickets to a train that will never arrive. The first reports of the haunting came decades ago, not long after the depot fell into disuse. A local historian cataloging the building's history recounted an unsettling encounter. While walking through the depot in the fading light of evening, he noticed a faint glow coming from the ticket booth. Upon closer inspection, he saw a man behind the counter, meticulously counting tickets and calling out destinations in a calm, practiced voice. The historian approached, expecting to meet another person, only to find the booth empty as soon as he reached it. The shuffle of papers and the lingering scent of ink and leather filled the air. Many witnesses describe the figure in remarkably similar terms. He appears as a middle-aged man, neatly dressed in the uniform of a ticket clerk, a vest, tie, and a cap that rests perfectly atop his head. His movements are precise and deliberate, handling tickets and ledger books with an almost obsessive attention to detail. He often calls out destinations, some long defunct, as if he is attending to the depot's former passengers. The ghostly clerk is never threatening, yet his presence inspires a deep sense of unease, reminder that the station still remembers its past, even when the living no longer pass through. Visitors who encounter the haunted ticket booth frequently report an uncanny sense of anticipation. Some hear the scratch of pen on paper, the faint shuffle of feet on the wooden floor, or the soft clink of coins as they are counted and placed in the till. Others hear the clerk calling out schedules or ticket prices, his voice calm and monotone, echoing across the empty platforms. Several witnesses have described attempting to purchase a ticket, only for the figure to vanish the moment they approach. leaving behind a lingering coldness in the air and the faint scent of ink. Staff who have maintained the depot over the years corroborate these experiences. Cleaning crews often report seeing tickets neatly stacked on the counter when they arrive in the morning, even though no one has been inside. Ledger books sometimes appear open to a page filled with meticulously written entries, yet no hand could be seen to write them. Motion sensors and cameras have captured fleeting shadows behind the counter. The subtle swish of a uniform, or the momentary reflection of a figure in the glass, only for nothing to be visible upon closer inspection. The phenomenon is consistent and precise, suggesting an entity with a very specific role, bound to the duties he performed in life. Paranormal researchers have studied the haunted ticket booth extensively, noting that the occurrences are both visual and auditory. Audio recordings capture voices calling out train times, the rustle of tickets, and even the faint rattle of a cash drawer opening and closing. Yet, there is never a definitive explanation, and all attempts to detect physical causes, wild animals, or structural quirks have failed. Many theorists propose that the spirit of the clerk remains tethered to the depot by duty, compelled to continue performing his job, even though the trains have long ceased to run. The ghost embodies a relentless adherence to routine, a life halted mid-task but carried forward in spectral repetition. The history of the depot provides a chilling context for the haunting. The ticket booth was once the center of its daily operations, a place where travelers queued for destinations near and far. It was a space of human connection, anticipation, and routine, and the clerk was central to this activity. Tragically, the man died suddenly while on duty, leaving his work unfinished. Some speculate that the traumatic interruption of his life, combined with the depot's enduring energy as a transit hub, anchored his spirit to the booth. In this sense, the haunted ticket clerk is not malevolent, but deeply bound to the memory of his responsibilities. Encounters with the ghostly clerk are often brief but unforgettable. Witnesses describe an almost hypnotic quality to the experience, the calm authority, the soft rustling of papers, and the low, measured cadence of his voice. Even without seeing him fully, the feeling of being observed, of being acknowledged as a passenger in a station that no longer serves travelers, lingers long after the encounter ends. Some report feelings of melancholy or nostalgia, as though the ghost is attempting to bridge the gap between the past and the present, offering a glimpse of a bustling station now frozen in time. For those who take the time to observe, the haunted ticket booth becomes more than a mere ghost story. It is a portal to the depot's past. Each ticket, each ledger entry, and each gesture of the clerk reflects the life and order of a time when the trains ran on schedule and the desert station was alive with movement. The booth serves as a reminder that the past is never entirely gone, and that the spirits of those who lived and worked within the depot may remain, preserving their routines and responsibilities long after the world has moved on. The haunted ticket booth continues to attract visitors, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts, all eager to witness the spectral clerk performing his endless duties. In the quiet hours, when the depot is still and the desert wind whispers across the empty tracks, the ghostly figure emerges behind the counter, counting tickets, calling out destinations, and ensuring that, even in the absence of passengers, the station fulfills its eternal purpose. It is a haunting that is both solemn and mesmerizing, a quiet reminder that some duties transcend life itself, and that the Kelso Depot remembers those who once kept its trains and travelers on track. The Kelso Depot, perched on the edge of the vast Mojave Desert, has long been a place of both fascination and unease. By day, it appears as a relic of the past, sun-bleached wood, rusted tracks, and empty platforms that once hummed with the rhythm of arrivals and departures. But at night, or during the extreme heat of the day, travelers have reported seeing something far more disturbing: a shimmering, elusive image of the depot appearing on the horizon, only to vanish as they draw near. This phenomenon, known among locals and visitors as the desert mirage, has become one of the most chilling mysteries surrounding the historic site. The first accounts of the desert mirage came from early railroad workers who traveled the desolate desert routes on long, lonely journeys. They would sometimes spot a distant structure that appeared to be the Kelso Depot, fully intact and bustling with life. Tracks gleamed in the sun, smoke rose from a distant engine, and figures moved along the platforms. Yet, when they pressed forward, eager for rest or water, the image would fade like mist, leaving only the barren desert stretching before them. Many dismissed it as a heat-induced illusion, a trick of the desert sun, but the stories persisted and grew stranger. Modern travelers have shared similar experiences. One group of tourists, driving along the old railway line, reported seeing the depot's familiar shape against the horizon during the midday heat. The sun glinted off the windows, and the shadows of figures moving across the platform were unmistakable. Excited, they sped toward it, hoping for a closer look, only to find the desert empty, with no sign of tracks, walls, or people. One of the travelers swore they had seen luggage piled neatly along the platform, and a man in a vest and cap attending to an unseen train. Yet when they arrived, the desert held nothing but sand, rocks, and silence. Witnesses often describe an overwhelming sense of anticipation, mixed with unease during these encounters. The mirage is not simply an optical illusion. It carries an almost magnetic pull, drawing travelers forward, instilling in them a subconscious need to reach it. Some report feeling the desert grow unnaturally still, the air heavier and warmer, as if the mirage itself is alive, watching, guiding them. The further one moves toward the image, the more insistent the pull becomes, and the more unnervingly real the depot seems until it vanishes entirely, leaving the traveler isolated, unsure if what they saw was a vision or a warning. Paranormal researchers have long been fascinated by the desert mirage, proposing theories that combine environmental phenomena with spectral activity. Some suggest it is an echo of the depot's past, a residual imprint of the bustling station replaying itself under extreme conditions. According to this theory, the energy of hundreds of travelers, workers, and railroad staff who once passed through the depot has imprinted on the landscape, manifesting intermittently in the shimmering heat waves of the desert. Others propose a more sinister explanation, that the mirage is a lure, a spectral trap set by the depot itself, designed to draw unsuspecting travelers into the desert, where they might vanish without a trace, much like some of the depot's long-lost passengers and workers. Local legends add a darker dimension to the phenomenon. Desert dwellers speak of those who followed the mirage too far, vanishing into the sand and sun, never to return. Some claim to have heard faint echoes of footsteps or distant whistles carried on the wind, as if phantom trains are still traveling the tracks that no longer exist. Others have reported glimpsing figures at the mirage's platform, railroad workers, travelers, and even a ticket clerk performing their duties with a precision that suggests they are trapped in a time loop, eternally reliving the final moments of the depot's heyday. The mirage is not limited to any specific time of day, though most encounters occur during extreme heat or at twilight. Travelers describe a shimmering, wavering effect, with light reflecting off windows, polished wood, and steel rails, giving the illusion of movement and life. Some have noted hearing the faint clatter of luggage or the distant hum of a train whistle, though there is no train and no tracks present. It is this combination of visual and auditory deception that makes the desert mirage so disorienting, leaving witnesses unsure whether they are observing reality, a memory, or a ghostly projection. Despite the unsettling experiences, some are drawn to the desert mirage intentionally, seeking to capture photographs or document the phenomenon. Yet few succeed. Cameras often fail to capture the full effect, producing only empty desert landscapes or blurry heat haze. Those who attempt to approach on foot describe a creeping sense of isolation, as if the mirage is stretching the distance between themselves and the depot. By the time they reach the supposed location, the image has vanished, leaving them with a profound unease and a story that is impossible to verify. The desert mirage has become emblematic of the Kelso Depot's broader hauntings. It is both a physical and metaphysical phenomenon, linking the depot's past with the present. Travelers, workers, and railroad staff who died there or vanished may still be lingering in some form, their energy imprinting upon the desert and calling out to the living. The mirage is a reminder that the depot is not merely a building but a nexus of history, memory, and the unexplained, a place where the line between the living and the spectral blurs. In many ways, the desert mirage is more than a visual trick. It is a warning, a lure, and a memorial all at once. It embodies the ghostly essence of the depot, carrying the stories of those who worked, waited, and sometimes disappeared. For travelers who glimpse it, the experience is unforgettable. The shimmering outline of a platform, the phantom figures, the tantalizing pull forward, and then, suddenly, nothing but desert. The mirage serves as a chilling reminder that in the Mojave, the Kelso Depot is never entirely gone, and some spirits, like the heat and light of the desert itself, cannot be contained. The Kelso Depot, long a symbol of travel and connection in the heart of the Mojave Desert, is known for its eerie, haunted presence that extends far beyond its platforms and waiting rooms. Among its most chilling areas is the depot's central courtyard, a once lively space where travelers, workers, and locals would gather to exchange news, share meals, and wait for trains to arrive. Today, the courtyard is quiet, sun-bleached, and empty, yet visitors insist that it is far from abandoned. Those who venture there often report feeling a sudden, inexplicable sense of unease, as though the air itself is charged with the memories of countless people who once passed through. Shadows of the past seem to linger, and faint voices, indistinct yet unmistakably human, echo through the open space. The haunting of the depot's courtyard has been noted for decades. Early reports came from railway workers who were tasked with maintaining the building. They would sweep the courtyards in the early morning, only to hear faint laughter, murmured conversations, and the shuffle of footsteps on the dusty tiles, even when no one else was present. One worker recalled seeing the outline of figures moving along the benches, pausing as if deep in conversation, and then vanishing when he approached. The phenomenon was not frightening at first merely strange, but the cumulative experiences soon took on a more unsettling quality, as the courtyard seemed to exist simultaneously in the present and in a spectral past. Sensing that unseen eyes are watching them, others hear voices carried on the desert wind, snippets of conversation, indistinct names, or the faint clatter of dishes and cups from a time when the courtyard hosted afternoon gatherings. Several have reported glimpsing shadowy figures sitting on benches, conversing quietly before dissolving into thin air. The experience is often disorienting. The courtyard appears normal, sunlit, and still. Yet the atmosphere is heavy, almost alive, as if the spirits of the past are replaying fragments of their lives. The spectral activity in the courtyard is not limited to visual or auditory phenomena. Some visitors have reported sudden drops in temperature, chills that move unpredictably across the open space, and a feeling of invisible presence brushing past them. A once ornate structure, now dried and cracked, when he felt a hand lightly touch his shoulder. Turning quickly, he saw no one, yet he could hear the distant murmur of children playing and the faint echo of a woman's laughter. Others describe hearing footsteps circling them in the open space, stopping abruptly whenever they turned to look. Paranormal investigators have studied the courtyard extensively, noting the combination of residual energy and interactive haunting. Many believe that the depot, as a focal point of travel and social activity, absorbed the energy of those who lived, worked, and passed through it. The courtyard, where people congregated daily, seems to hold particularly strong imprints. According to some theories, the voices and movements that visitors perceive are residual echoes, replaying moments of social interaction that occurred decades ago. Other theories suggest a more intentional haunting, in which spirits remain tethered to the courtyard, seeking interaction or acknowledgement from the living. The history of the depot provides context for the haunting. The courtyard was once the heart of the station, a communal area where travelers awaited their departures, workers coordinated shipments, and families said goodbye to loved ones. Children played near the fountain, merchants sold goods from temporary stalls, and musicians occasionally entertained with impromptu performances. In such a concentrated space of human activity, It is easy to imagine the lingering presence of souls who lived and died connected to the depot. Many of the spirits are thought to be tied to unresolved events, those who disappeared, those who waited endlessly for trains that never arrived, and those who died while working within the depot's walls. One of the most commonly reported phenomena is the sound of whispered conversations. Visitors often describe hearing fragmented sentences, names, and greetings, but never full conversations. Some believe the whispers are attempts at communication from the spirits, fragments of memory echoing from a time long past. Others feel the whispers are warnings, subtle cues to leave the space before the energy becomes overwhelming. Regardless of interpretation, the auditory elements contribute significantly to the courtyard's reputation as a haunted area. Visual sightings are less frequent, but more striking. Some report seeing shadowy figures move along the benches or the edges of the courtyard, sometimes appearing to glance toward them before vanishing. Others describe glimpses of women in period dresses or men in hats and vests, their attire consistent with the depot's heyday. These apparitions often appear in the periphery of vision, vanishing when looked at directly, adding to the sense of disorientation. The combination of sights, sounds, and sensations creates a multisensory haunting that leaves visitors unsettled, yet captivated. The haunted courtyard of the Kelso Depot is more than just a ghost story. It is a place where the past remains vividly present. Each whisper, shadow, and chill serves as a reminder of the depot's rich history and the countless lives that intersected there. For those who enter the courtyard, the experience is unforgettable. A brief encounter with the echoes of human activity and emotion preserved across decades. Some leave with a sense of awe, others with lingering unease, but all are touched by the presence of the unseen. In the quiet of the desert, when the sun sets and the wind rustles across the empty tiles of the courtyard, the voices seem to rise, faint but insistent. Laughter, conversation, and footsteps intertwine with the whisper of the desert breeze, creating an atmosphere that is both mesmerizing and chilling. The haunted courtyard of the Kelso Depot stands as a testament to the endurance of memory, energy, and spirit, reminding visitors that even in abandoned spaces, the past is never truly gone. The depot's courtyard is alive in a way few places are, a nexus of history and haunting where the living can brush against the lives that came before. The Kelso Depot, standing alone in the vast expanse of the Mojave Desert, has long been a place of stories, some of history, others of mystery and the supernatural. Among the many ghostly tales associated with this desert railway station, none is more chilling than the story known simply as the Final Farewell. It is the story of a passenger who boarded a train at the depot long ago and never returned, a spectral figure said to linger on the platform, eternally waiting for a train that will never arrive. The tale begins in the early 20th century, when the depot was alive with movement and purpose. Steam engines hissed, luggage clattered across wooden floors, and travelers hurried along the platforms to catch their trains. Among them was a solitary passenger, a man traveling for reasons now lost to history. He checked his ticket and stepped onto the platform, his eyes scanning the tracks for the arrival of his train. According to local accounts, he never boarded a train again, or at least, never arrived at his intended destination. Witnesses over the years describe the figure as a solitary presence on the deserted platform. Those who have ventured near the depot late at night report seeing a man pacing slowly along the tracks, his posture tense with expectation, as though every approaching rumble might signal the train he waited for all those years. He appears solid at first glance, dressed in the period attire of a traveler, a worn suit, a hat tipped low, and a small suitcase or satchel in hand. Yet upon closer approach, he fades into mist, leaving behind only the faint echo of footsteps or the distant clink of metal luggage tags. The haunting is not merely visual. Travelers and maintenance staff alike have reported hearing sounds associated with a bustling depot, though the area is long abandoned. Footsteps echo on empty platforms, faint conversations drift on the desert wind, and the hiss of steam can sometimes be heard, though no engines run. and no tracks are in use. Some witnesses claim to have felt a sudden drop in temperature along the platform, a chill that seems to radiate from the spot where the passenger waits. Others report hearing the metallic click of a train whistle, followed by the soft murmur of voices, only for the sounds to fade into the silence of the desert. The ghostly passenger is often described as restless. Unlike some spirits, who appear briefly before vanishing, this figure seems trapped in a loop of anticipation. He paces the same stretch of platform, eyes fixed on the horizon, waiting for a train that no longer exists. Local lore suggests that he represents more than just a lost traveler. He is a symbol of unfinished journeys, missed connections, and the passage of time frozen in the desert heat. Accounts of encounters with the final farewell are both eerie and unsettling. One visitor, arriving at the depot at dusk, reported seeing the figure standing by the edge of the platform. The man's eyes were fixed on the tracks, unblinking and intensely focused. The visitor tried to speak, calling out a greeting, but the figure did not respond. As the visitor stepped closer, the man seemed to fade, and the desert around him remained still, save for the whisper of the wind. Even after leaving the depot, the visitor reported feeling the weight of the man's presence, a lingering sense of anticipation and longing that seemed almost tangible. The story has been reinforced by numerous accounts over the decades. Railroad historians, desert travelers, and local residents all tell similar tales. The man is always present on the platform when least expected, yet impossible to reach. Some claim to have approached him, only to find that he disappears entirely the moment they are within a few feet, leaving behind nothing but the faint imprint of footsteps or the soft echo of a suitcase being set down. Others have reported fleeting glimpses of the train itself, a ghostly engine emerging from the desert haze, only to vanish before reaching the platform. Paranormal investigators have studied the final farewell extensively, noting that the phenomenon combines visual, auditory, and tactile elements. The figure embodies a classic residual haunting, replaying a moment frozen in time, yet also seems to interact with the environment, drawing attention and evoking emotional responses in witnesses. Some researchers suggest that the spirit's attachment to the depot is tied to trauma, the sudden disappearance, the uncertainty of what became of him, and the abrupt end to his journey, leaving his consciousness suspended between worlds. Others propose that he is tethered to the energy of the depot itself, a place long associated with departures, arrivals, and the anticipation of travel, now preserved in a liminal state where past and present converge. The final farewell serves as a chilling reminder of the depot's haunted history. It is not simply a story of a lost passenger. It is a meditation on impermanence, the fragility of human plans, and the lingering echoes of the past. The Kelso Depot, once a bustling hub of movement and life, is now a monument to stillness and memory, and the ghostly passenger embodies that transition. His pacing along the tracks, eternally awaiting a train that will never come, captures the essence of the depot itself, a place caught between history and the supernatural, between departure and eternity. Visitors to the depot today can walk along the platform in the fading desert light, and if they are fortunate or unfortunate, catch a glimpse of the man. Some feel the hairs on their necks stand on end. Others feel a sudden sadness, a sense of longing for journeys never completed. Those who linger near the tracks report hearing soft whispers, a greeting, a sigh, or the faint clatter of luggage, as if the passenger is still preparing for a journey he can never take. The haunting of the final farewell remains one of the most enduring and poignant legends of the Kelso Depot. It is a story that transcends the ordinary ghost tale, combining history, loss, and the supernatural into a single, unforgettable figure. The man on the platform reminds all who witness him that the depot is more than wood, and steel. It is a place of memory, of expectation, and of spirits trapped in time. In the quiet desert, when the wind stirs the empty tracks and the sun dips below the horizon, the ghostly passenger continues his vigil, eternally awaiting a train that will never arrive. A testament to the enduring mysteries of the Kelso Depot. The Kelso Depot stands as a silent sentinel in the Mojave Desert, its walls echoing with the whispers of the past. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, the The stories of the depot are sure to send a shiver down your spine. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the haunted history of the Kelso Depot. Until next time, keep your lights on and your mind open, for you never know what secrets the shadows may hold.